Chapter 666. After a few seconds, his gaze regained its focus, and he was stunned by the scene in front of him. The other warship that was roughly 2 kilometers away from them was completely enveloped in flames. The soldiers wanted to rush out of the warship, but they were unable to break free from the terrifying flames. The 200 billion in front of his eyes had turned into 2 balls of fire, causing Fu Dongku to be completely stunned. Just at that moment, a shout came out from outside the warship. Throw! The ball of light was not fast, but the distance between them was too close, to the point that the warship was unable to dodge. Unless... Leave this place. Fu Dongku roared. His eyes were red as though he was a gambler at the end of his rope. Tang Tian was like a bulldozer rushing forward. His subordinates screamed and Fu Dongku had already rushed to the window. The star treasures that were unwilling to be suppressed started to move, and struggled in everyone's hands. The 700 over silver treasures struggling at the same time did not create a huge commotion, but it was not small either. The distance between both parties was too close and was immediately sensed. Childish. Little fool glanced at Yaya, who was shouting excitedly. He expressionlessly appeared at the front of the group like a ghost, the transparent ocean prison sword in his hand thrusted out. Fu Dongku forced himself to calm down. If the information was true, then the enemy's plot had no meaning, because the enemy's strength was completely at a disadvantage, and such a plot would not allow them to gain the initiative. Fu Dongku quivered and suddenly shouted, "Retreat! Everyone retreat!" Fu Dongku's heart jumped. Sword after sword, Jing Hao brandished drunk on Saint Blood in his hand, as though he was taking a stroll in the park. A group of people had gathered behind him. Such a loss was enough to make his heart bleed. Fu Dongku only felt that the piercing light had filled his vision, and everything in front of him was white. The warship beneath his feet swayed intensely, as though he could not stand steadily, as though he was in the middle of a storm. A moment later the earth-shaking roar came slowly and no one could hear a thing. Not good. Ambush. The enemy had been controlling the intensity of their attacks, forcing their warships to retreat, and using their warships as meat shields. After that, they intentionally weakened their firepower, giving them a false impression that they were powerless, baiting their formation to continue pressing forward. The warship was too close, so close that it was impossible to dodge. The entire plan was closely linked. Even if he were to start all over again, Fu Dongku guessed that he would fall for it again. More than 700 silver secret treasures produced a suction force at the same time, causing all the energy within a radius of 100 miles to be pulled. Even the undercurrent area where Tang Tian and the others were hiding did not escape. The black energy turbulence looked like a piece of black silk cloth as it was sucked into the ball of light. Fu Dongku's face changed, his voice changed. "Leave this place. Run." Suddenly, a small head popped out from Tang Tian's clothes. It was Yaya. Its eyes were shining. Wasn't this the 2222 that it was best at? It howled and jumped out of Tang Tian's arms. In midair, the little flag behind its buttocks fluttered. It waved its pair of small fists. Although it was small in size, its fists were extremely hard and its attack frequency was extremely fast. It was actually able to smash open a path. In the blink of an eye, a group of people followed behind it. There's an ambush. With Tang Tian and the rest leading the way, their speed became faster. However, it took them a full 10 minutes to cover a distance of less than 50 kilometers. These 10 minutes felt like a lifetime to them. If it was any other time, the distance of 50 li would only take a moment for them. The torrents flew everywhere, causing the space in front of them to become empty. Tang Tian took a step forward and before the torrents closed up, he punched out again. Bang bang bang. The suction force behind them became weak and everyone knew that they were out of danger. There was a flash of strong light. Tang Tian and the rest did not even turn to look. They ran with all their might, trying to get as far away from the light balls as possible. They knew how terrifying the suction force of the light balls were. At that time, they had sucked out all the energy in the entire southern islands. Oh my god. Quickly look. One by one, the light balls quickly lit up. All the star treasures that were in slumber were awakened. The martial spirits that originated from Heaven's Road felt the dense energy around them, and could not help but cheer out. Ambush. Begin. More and more disciples revealed their fatigue, causing Tang Tian to become even more anxious. The suction force behind them was still astonishing. If they did not rush out of the area, they would once again be sucked into the whirlpool. An intense sense of danger enveloped Fu Dongku. His eyes were filled with fear. He felt as though he had fallen into a trap filled with blades. The warship is being sucked in. The subordinate's voice was filled with fear and despair. Get behind me. Tang Tian's order made everyone feel like they were being pardoned. The star treasures in their hands were like burning iron, and they were thrown towards the fleet in front of them. Then without hesitation everyone turned and ran. They were so agile, it was as though there was a mad dog chasing after them. They did not care about their image or posture. They were in a sorry state, as though they were afraid of something. They were in the sea of energy, and every inch of space was filled with dense and viscous energy. For such a medium-scale silver-grade warship, its defense was extremely outstanding. What was equally outstanding was its cost. Adding on the weapons, the medium-scale silver-grade warship required at least 200 billion cloud coins. With that said, he flicked his hand and threw the disciple in front of him. If it was any other time with Tang Tian's strength, he could completely throw the disciple 300 m away, but this time he only threw him 30 m away. Bang! It was a silver-grade warship. Stars revolved on the umbrella and a thin layer of light mist floated out. Little Fool's expression was calm. His ocean prison sword had completed its evolution, and was currently much stronger. Even against the torrent he was still able to handle it with ease. They're behind us. Run with all your might. Jing Hao smiled. He raised Drunk on Saint Blood in his hand, and slashed at the torrent in front of him. Sigh, the energy torrent in front of him suddenly split apart, and the disciples behind him felt the pressure on them lessen. Seeing that the torrent was about to merge back together, Jing Hao slashed again. Is this a trap? Did they purposely leak out the news of the Shang continent being empty? Or was it fake news from the pontoon bridge? Countless of thoughts flashed past Fu Dongku's mind. The more he thought about it, the more afraid he became. A crafty person is bound to be suspicious. He initially thought that he had a 90% chance of success, but now that his confidence was shaken, he decided to retreat and observe the situation first. A groan came out from beside him. Tang Tian turned his head, only to see a disciple who was unable to control his body, and was about to be swept away. Tang Tian's figure flashed. He rushed to his side, grabbed onto his collar and bellowed, "Stay alert." When Tang Tian's words came out, everyone activated the star treasures in their hands at the same time. Seeing that the pirates were like a flock of startled birds, retreating in panic, Tang Tian became even happier. Fu Dongku's fleet was in the center of the vortex. How could they escape? The energy in the surrounding area all surged along with the light regiments. The nearby disciples immediately followed behind Little Fool. The surrounding energy surged towards them frantically. They were in the sea of energy, and what they lacked the least was energy. Every star treasure was like a vortex. Tang Tian had put in a lot of effort this time. The star treasures in the hands of the disciples of the three families were all silver-grade star treasures. That was the only thought in everyone's mind. The terrifying suction force coming from behind pulled the energy around them. They were like fish swimming against the current. Every step was extremely difficult and their speed was extremely slow. The teeth-aching breaking sound caused Fu Dongku's scalp to go numb. He personally saw the warship breaking in half in front of him, splitting into two, transforming into two gigantic regiments of fire. The disciples behind him felt the pressure on them lessen and became extremely excited. Fu Dongku was not a newbie who had never been on the battlefield, but it was his first time witnessing such a bitter scene. But they were being suppressed by their wielder. It was as though the warships were delivered to their doorsteps and saved them a lot of time. Behind the fleet, Tang Tian made a hand gesture to the rest. Everyone revealed looks of excitement. All of them held onto a star treasure, but it was not activated. An umbrella-shaped light barrier opened up from his sword tip. Ursa Major Star's umbrella. A cry of surprise attracted everyone's attention. Everyone subconsciously raised their heads to look. Many of them could not help but hug their heads. They were all stunned by the scene in front of them. Outside the warships, there were many figures, and in each of their hands, a small regiment of light could be seen. It was a scheme. They were greedily absorbing energy. The star treasures that had lost their suppression began to absorb energy even more frantically, causing dazzling light scars to appear in the air, like shooting stars streaking across. These were the light scars formed by the friction of the high-speed energy beams. Very quickly, the light scars became more and more numerous, like raindrops, They surged from all directions, rushing towards the star treasures. After Tang Tian and the rest activated the star treasures, they had been suppressing them with all their might. And after losing the suppression, the silver-grade star treasures were finally able to absorb energy from the surroundings without any obstruction. The endless energy allowed the martial spirits in the star treasures to grow at an astonishing rate. The continuously strengthening martial spirits produced an even stronger suction force. Bang! The palm-sized light regiments in their hands upon being thrown out would expand at an astonishing rate, and in the air they would become the size of a basin. The light regiments had different colors and at their edges were whirlpools of light. They were still growing at an astonishing rate. Fu Dongku's mind was blank. It was not his cowardice. It was a human's instinct. Tang Tian roared. He rushed to the front of the group facing the torrent. He fiercely punched out. Many of them did not care about their image and sat down. The disciples who still had strength left held onto their knees and gasped for breath. They retreated a full 60 li ka ka ka. The enemy warship was getting closer and closer and Tang Tian became calmer. Bu Zifei's move had shocked him but very quickly he had a whole new level of respect for Bu Zifei. That sissy has some standards. He did not blindly rely on the stronghold's defense to drag time, and was actually able to destroy one of the enemy's warships. Such a battle result was something that even Tang Tian admired. Chapter 667. Bing's expression was indifferent. He had never heard of the name Fu Dongku. Towards the so-called famed generals he had never been interested in them. But when he saw Richard's expression his heart was filled with disdain. Humph, this fellow is a bootlicker. He had underestimated the might of the technique. If not for them escaping quickly, if not for the few of them, the rest of them would have died. Master. The subordinate did not care about the palm print on his face and spoke with a trembling voice. Pirates. There are pirates, it's over, Dongqi is finished, the Qi palace is burned. In the face of such a terrifying power, the powerful warships did not have any power to resist. They could not even struggle free from the suction force. Bu Zifei received an intense shock. His mind was in a daze. He had seen energy whirlpools before and he had seen even bigger energy whirlpools, but he had never thought that there would be a day where such an inhuman power would be used in a war. Cough cough cough. Tang Tian could not be bothered. They wanted a share of the profits from attacking the Shang continent. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Bing stood at the side, smoking his cigarette as though there was no one else around. Regardless if it was Tang Tian or Bing, they were not people who would repay evil with good, and everyone believed that hatred should not be left unresolved. I found it, it's the Dongqi continent. Richard's face was filled with excitement. He had been promoted to the head of intelligence and worked even harder. Fu Dongku's army is nowhere to be found. They announced that it was a long-distance training, and it just so happens to be 3 middle-scale silver-grade warships and 6 silver-grade warships. I never thought that it would be the Dongqi Fox to be defeated by Big Boss. It is not wrong. Friends eat meat together, enemies fight to the death. Everyone, do you want to be friends or enemies? When the rulers of the various continents received the reports from the scouts, their first reaction was disbelief. They had never heard of anyone being able to use the energy whirlpool, and the laws contained in the energy whirlpool were not high-level laws. To destroy a fleet of 3 middle-scale silver-grade warships, how big would the energy whirlpool be? The remaining 2 warships were also in a precarious situation. Richard was of course excited. The Dongqi Fox Fu Dongku was a famous general and it was a true battle achievement. He was recruited by Tang Tian, and admired Tang Tian from the bottom of his heart, and felt that Fu Dongku losing to Tang Tian was not a humiliation to him. What? Energy whirlpool? An entire fleet of battleships destroyed? Are you kidding me? Suddenly, a subordinate stumbled into the room. His face was deathly pale and his face was full of panic. That's true. Being defeated by me is his honor. Tang Tian was immensely proud of himself and his nose was almost in the air. Bing, who had a black face, naturally looked at the other representatives with a gaze that was not friendly at all. Tang Tian was also shocked by the scene in front of him. He had thought that this method might work, but he didn't expect it to be so powerful. He was inspired by how the Southern Islands activated their star treasures on the Black Arrow warship, and that scene left a deep impression on him. He felt that the effect would definitely be better in the Sea of Energy, but he did not expect that it would be too good. Boom, the entire hall exploded. All the representatives stood up at once. their faces filled with shock. The surrounding people all perked up their ears. Only Bing remained indifferent and leisurely smoked his cigarette. The whirlpool was expanding at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the warships that were struggling in the whirlpool became slower and slower. The light barrier shattered. Boom, the warship exploded into a regiment of flames, and following that, the wreckage of the warship that was enveloped in the regiment of flames was sucked into the dazzling snow-white center of the whirlpool. Tang Tian could not be bothered. The East Divergent Continent, in his mind, was already classified as an enemy. To deal with an enemy he had to be unscrupulous. Tang Tian, who was slightly impatient, did not want to beat around the bush. He stood up and looked around, not concealing the killing intent on his face. There was no resistance, no intense battle, it was a perfect sneak attack. The intense coughing broke the silence in the hall. Bing heard Tang Tian's words and was so shocked that he swallowed the smoke and choked and coughed. As he coughed, he scolded in his mind, "This idiot, how can he admit to such a thing? If I had known earlier, I would not have let this idiot speak." The 700 star treasures formed a gigantic whirlpool. The representatives from the other continents all revealed expressions of schadenfreude. They were happy to see the situation in front of them. The pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light was a huge cake, and the fewer people there were, the more everyone would get. So when Bing rejected the East Divergent Continent's participation, almost everyone agreed. But when the images of the battle were transmitted to them, everyone remained silent. Bang bang bang. A cold light flashed past Bing's eyes, and the smile on his face became somewhat cold. Bing finally saw how Tyrant Tang fought a battle. The East Divergent Continent that had lost Fu Dongku was at its weakest. How could they be the opponent of the cunning and experienced Lian Bo-jun and Shursen's underworld continent demonic mounts? The East Divergent Continent's army quickly crumbled, and Lian Bo-jun and Shursen easily found the East Divergent Continent's weakness, and killed their way into the East Divergent Palace. Bu Zifei took a deep breath. He forced himself to calm down. In the darkness far away, countless eyes were spying on them. He believed that the news of the battle would spread throughout the entire southern region, no, even the entire Sacred Saint Galaxy. The first to explode were the 6 frigates. They transformed into 6 regiments of fire. The dazzling flames only lasted for a moment, and then along with the broken hull, they were sucked into the gigantic vortex. Bing's face turned black. Ever since Tang Tian went to the White Sands continent, he did not learn anything else, but to use money to smash people. He learned it without a teacher. 700 silver treasures, even in Heaven's Road, it was worth a fortune. If it was sold in the Sacred Saint Galaxy, even if it could not be compared to the fleet, it would definitely not be much cheaper. Even the representative of the East Divergent Continent did not expect that Tang Tian would actually admit to it. But the undisguised disregard caused him to feel even more suffocated, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Tang Tian had a lingering fear in his heart. Before they understood the situation clearly, no one would dare to provoke them. That meant they were temporarily safe. The mocking expressions of the people around made the representative even angrier. He gave his subordinate a slap and scolded, "Is the sky falling down? What are you panicking for? Go back and reflect on yourself." Bing anxiously rushed back from the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light. Upon seeing the energy vortex, his mouth twitched and he squeezed out 3 words, "Prodigal son." Close to 1 trillion cloud coins, a complete elite army. Such a blow to any powerhouse would be a huge blow. Bu Zifei stared blankly at the gigantic energy vortex in the distance. His limbs were ice cold, his face pale white. Big Boss actually had such a powerful weapon in his hands. The representatives of every continent, when passing through the Shang continent's estuary, would all stop in front of the gigantic energy vortex to size it up. Seeing the real thing, it was far more shocking than the images, especially when they thought about how the gigantic energy vortex was actually created by a human. Everyone's heart turned cold. The East Divergent Continent Palace was the palace of the East Divergent Continent's lord. For it to be burned, it meant that the East Divergent Continent was destroyed. The representative of the East Divergent Continent only felt his head buzzing as he was punched. The world was spinning, and after an unknown period of time he regained his senses. He suddenly turned, his finger trembling as he pointed at Tang Tian and laughed bitterly. You are so ruthless." He was determined when he returned he would definitely think of a way to stop the Shang continent's alliance. But at that moment, everyone looked at Tang Tian in fear, as though they were looking at a demon from hell. Bu Zifei only had one question in his mind: what exactly was it? But the East Divergent Continent. An entire fleet of warships, 3 silver-grade middle-sized warships, 6 silver frigates, such a luxurious and powerful arrangement, was actually completely destroyed without even being able to retaliate. Unknowingly, Bu Zifei felt sad. He knew how much manpower and resources were needed to build such a fleet and how much time was needed. But in the blink of an eye, they were destroyed as though they were erased from the sky. In truth, such a result was out of Tang Tian's expectations, but he did not feel guilty at all. Bing felt that he had held back his energy and was prepared to go all out, but then someone told him that the game was over. That feeling was extremely stifling. After finding out that it was the East Divergent Continent, Bing sent out Zhou Xian and planned to disguise as pirates and give the East Divergent Continent a huge blow. Who knew that Tang Tian would be even more ferocious? Upon hearing Bing's plan to disguise as pirates, without saying a word, he found real pirates. Through Suabai, he contacted Lian Bojun and used 100 black gold warship weapons to bribe the Black Sand pirates. If not for their caution, everyone would have died here. You can't do that. The representative of the East Divergent Continent waved his hand agitatedly, his face filled with anger. Master, not good. The subordinate's voice trembled. Everyone's gaze turned over, causing the representative to feel that he had lost all face, and bellowed, "Who allowed you to come in?" Inside the colorful vortex, a fleet was trying their best to escape, but they were like tortoises trapped in a net, and it was extremely difficult. What was more terrifying was that the energy barrier of the warships, under the assault of the rain of energy beams, were starting to crumble. The high-speed energy beams were much more powerful than arrows, and under such a concentrated attack, nothing could escape. The most direct reaction was that Bing suddenly realized that the number of pirates near the pontoon bridge had decreased sharply. And the various continents of the southern region that originally maintained their silence all sent their representatives to the Shang continent, and agreed to form an alliance. The vortex was multicolored. It was a myriad of colors, as though it was mixed with paint. The closer it was to the center, the brighter it became, and the center of the vortex was so bright that no one could look straight at it, and even the star treasures inside could not be seen clearly. The hall immediately quietened down. The various envoys looked at Tang Tian in shock. "You will regret this," the representative of the East Divergent Continent said hatefully. "No one can ignore the existence of our East Divergent Continent." Sword Forest Strongholds Hall. Tang Tian looked at him with disdain, but was not angry and said indifferently, "Since you've done this, don't blame me for retaliating." Bu Zifei quivered, his face suddenly flushed red with excitement. He was extremely excited. Such a terrifying power could possibly change the pattern of the war, and to a general with knowledge and experience, it held too much information. What did Big Boss and the rest just throw out? That's right, it's a negotiation. All of them were actually frightened by the fool Tang Tian. They are truly spineless. What was that just now? Bing followed the pontoon bridge with difficulty. Every step was extremely difficult. But for Tang Tian, he completely used star treasures to drown the other party. The fool was extremely relaxed and carefree, while he himself was as tired as a dog. Bing was initially prepared for a bitter battle, as though he was facing a great enemy to raise the morale, but in the end he rushed back to negotiate. Chapter 668. Austin's smile froze on his face. The expressions of everyone in the Taurus constellation froze. No one moved. Aluan squinted his eyes. A strand of killing intent flashed past his eyes. Once again, a familiar scene appeared in his mind, and the blurry scene overlapped with the scene in front of him. Many people in the crowd tried their best to memorize all the details. The news of the Frost Mountains had long spread out, and it was said to be Sai Lei's pinnacle work. To be able to witness it personally, how could they let go of the opportunity? And compared to the other constellations, the newly emerged Ursa Major constellation was even more mysterious. They had appeared out of nowhere without any warning, causing the entire Taurus constellation to be extremely curious about them. One after another, silver-armored soldiers walked out from the star door like flowing water. Someone exclaimed, and the star door in front of them lit up with a faint light aura. Screw was focused on the components in front of him. Like a child who had obtained his favorite toy, he did not even raise his head for a moment. He did not sleep or rest and was immersed in the junk. Luckily he was a spirit general. Crazy, they're all crazy. Austin muttered. I don't know what's so good about that woman. All of you go over there. Isn't it just the Ursa Major constellation? The Honorable Martial Alliance did not lose. The training grounds became silent. Everyone was stunned by Screw's actions. If even you can think of it, I think that old gangster will definitely think of it. Bradley said indifferently. Duan Mu, who was supervising the training, immediately stopped the soldiers, causing them to look at Screw, who had barged into the training grounds in shock. No one berated Screw, they all recognized the crippled spirit general, but they could not make heads or tails of what Screw was trying to do. Austin sneered, hoping for the Yifan family to give birth to beauties? If the Yifan family's women were half as beautiful as their servants, the Yifan family's doorstep would have long been trampled down. Everyone retreat 60m. I truly do not understand, cousin brother, for a woman, why would you make such a big fuss? Austin yawned. He was the son of a prince and grew up with Bradley. The two of them were like brothers and thus naturally spoke more casually. He mumbled, I hope it's a beauty, if not it will be a huge loss. Truly a pure and innocent spirit general. The others around them did not dare to join in on the conversation, but they were all mulling over the meaning of Prince Brad's words. As one of the 12 ecliptic palaces, Taurus constellation was once illustrious. Just like the golden walls of the Taurus palace, it was usually bustling with noise and excitement, but the walls of the palace had already been eroded and peeled off. Mottled cracks and cobwebs filled with dust could be seen everywhere. Silently watching the mechanical spirit weapons sprinting to and fro in the training grounds, the plowing of the soil, the intense collisions, the chase, the scene in front of him was familiar yet foreign, causing Screw to be in a daze. Clang. He drew the silver broadsword from his back. As expected, Screw placed down the unformed object in his hands and walked to the side of the training grounds. Every day at this time, Screw would put down the mechanical components and walk to the training grounds to watch the mechanical martial artists train. Alun definitely did not want any accidents to happen. He controlled the mechanical spirit weapon and walked towards the crowd. Suddenly he walked into the training ground. Screw walked to number 23. Do you want to win? For some reason he felt that number 23 shouldn't lose, even though number 23 had lost 22 matches in a row and was only one loss away from his number. This is definitely Ursa Major Constellation's newest mechanical spirit weapon, Frost Mountain. Alun spoke word by word, his killing intent overflowing, enveloping the entire place. Dao Dun is much more ruthless than us. Bradley retracted the smile on his face and said, She that trash was stripped of all his possessions and thrown to the countryside. Madame Chu, she was found out to have poisoned Sai Lei's mother. And after that, it was found out that when Jiang and Zhang Ming his sneak attack on Three Spirit City was also related to her. The Chu family and the Honorable Martial Alliance have always been close, and Madame Chu, she has already been locked up. Because of this, the Chu family went to find the Yifan family, but in the end, they were directly chased out by Dao Dun, and the two families almost fought. Bradley knew that his cousin brother had a favorable impression of the Honorable Martial Alliance, and did not refute but laughed. It's better to bet on both sides than to bet on one side. Duan Mu's reaction was faster and immediately shouted, Why aren't you going? Screw threw down this sentence and turned to walk towards the pile of abandoned mechanical parts. Such treatment had never happened before in the history of the Taurus constellation, and naturally attracted much criticism. In the past few years, the name Sai Lei was still unfamiliar to the Taurus constellation. Until the recent years, due to the power of the Ursa Major constellation, Sai Lei, who was hailed as the current generation's #1 mechanical grandmaster, had become famous. And following that, the inside story of Sai Lei being born in the Taurus constellation became a hot topic, causing Sai Lei's reputation in the Taurus constellation to soar. Compared to ordinary mechanical spirit weapons that were 4 to 5 meters tall, the mechanical spirit weapons in front of them were much smaller and skinnier, with a height of roughly 2 meters, equivalent to a slightly taller person. They could not see the heavy and bulky mechanical components as they tightly wrapped around their bodies, flowing in beautiful arcs that resembled flowing water. They were not bulky at all, but instead looked more like silver armor. The translucent wings on their backs were extremely ethereal. What was surprising was that the seemingly slender and beautiful mechanical spirit weapons seemed to be extremely heavy. Every step they took would produce a loud rumbling sound. So ruthless. Austin sucked in a breath of cold air. He suddenly thought of something and his eyes widened. She used to be the successor of the Fan family, but now that he has been banished, I haven't heard of anyone replacing him? Unless that old gangster. Don't tell me he wants Sai Lei to take over his position. Austin choked. Everyone knew that the Ursa Major constellation was currently weak, and the conflicts within the constellation were becoming more prominent. In the past few years, the aristocratic families did not produce any talented disciples, but they held the majority of the resources, and the geniuses among the ordinary people would usually leave their homes and enter the new constellations. Everyone retreat 60m. Number 23 looked at Screw, who was looking down at him, and replied, yes. Bradley laughed and did not deny it. The news of Mechanical Grandmaster Sai Lei returning to her hometown to visit her family spread like the wind across the entire Taurus constellation. Old Man Fei looked at the time. It was time. Bradley laughed. You don't have to worry about that. Sai Lei is a publicly acknowledged beauty. Alun walked out from the star door, and seeing the crowd in front of him, he frowned. The other party was too close, and at such a distance, it was easy for accidents to happen. For this mission, all of them had broken their heads. In the end, it was Luan and Chen Zilin, the golden pair, who won and obtained the honorable mission of protecting Big Sister. Bring your mechanical weapon and follow me. Could it be that he had seen such a scene in the past? A damaged spirit general with a mechanical spirit weapon behind him rumbled as it stepped on the ground, following them. Austin snorted. The Honorable Martial Alliance has ruled Heaven's Road for a few hundred years. Their foundation is extremely deep, and is not something a small constellation like Ursa Major constellation can compare to. They're here. In the entire process, there was no noise at all. Only the rumbling of the mechanical weapons could be heard. If Ursa Major constellation is a small constellation, then what is our Taurus constellation? Bradley said indifferently. In the dead silence, Luan repeated it once again. His tone was unquestionable, direct and efficient, and everyone could hear it clearly. Unlike Austin, who was handsome, Bradley was more sturdy and steady. And young barbarian king, Bradley could be considered the only consolation for the Taurus constellation in the past few years. Although he was not as dazzling as Tang Tian, Sima Shao and the rest, but his steady style still won him praise. Before Sai Lei left, he had warned everyone not to disturb him. But the old people in the Blood Meridian's laboratory were still worried, and they would take turns to look at Screw every day. Old Man Fei drank his tea. Looking at Screw, who was immersed in the components, he was startled. In terms of age, Screw was a spirit general from 10,000 years ago, and his age was older than everyone else in the Blood Meridian's laboratory added together. But looking at Screw, who was like a child, all the old people felt guilty and sad for not being able to cure Screw completely. What does the king mean by this? Austin was suddenly curious. This is a solid slap to the face of the Fan family. How can the old gangster of the Fan family swallow this down? He was at a loss. He shook his head and threw all the messy thoughts to the back of his mind, and once again placed his attention on the training grounds. The training grounds were undergoing a one-on-one battle, and Soldier 23 had lost again. His right rib had a weakness, which was caught by the opponent, and he was defeated after suffering a heavy blow. Soldier 23 awoke from his daze. He immediately crawled up and chased after Screw. A look of envy flashed past Duanmu's eyes. Such fortune could only be chanced upon and not sought for. But he quickly regained his composure. Duanmu, who had the nickname of Weapon Rack, had long become the chief instructor of Three Spirit City. He was in charge of imparting various martial techniques to the soldiers, and he was extremely satisfied with his current life. No one knew, but at this time every day a similar scene would surface in his mind. A silver mechanical leg extended out from the star door. Following that, a mechanical spirit weapon walked out. The aristocrats of the Taurus constellation all revealed looks of curiosity. The mechanical spirit weapon in front of them was completely different from the mechanical spirit weapons sold in the market. It was obvious that the Ursa Major constellation had specially made mechanical spirit weapons for their armies, and could not be bought outside. The Taurus constellation had sent out a large-scale welcoming team, personally led by Prince Bradley, to the star door of the Taurus constellation to welcome them. Clang. The soldiers behind him all unsheathed the silver broadswords on their backs. Although Austin was cursing in his heart, but he still forced a smile on his face. Before he could say anything, the martial artist who was walking towards them said, "Everyone retreat 60m." The Taurus constellation had been declining for the past few years, and there had not been any heroic figures appearing for many years. All of the proud sons and daughters of the heavens that were once looked upon favorably had either disappeared or had indulged in a life of luxury. Old Man Fei's eyes widened, the cup that was at his mouth stopped and did not move. It was Screw's first new action in the past few days. Chapter 669. He was on guard. Bullard was bewildered. The name of the Ursa Major constellation's saint unit had long shaken the world. The number of saints they possessed had already surpassed the Leo constellation, and was second only to the Honorable Martial Alliance's temple. It was just that the saints of the Ursa Major saint unit were mostly independent saints, and their strengths were not high, thus their fighting strength was ranked behind the Leo constellation, and was publicly acknowledged as the third. Bang. But since this was Tang Tian's decision, Tang Chou still worked hard to complete it. Tang Tian, that bastard, did he do it on purpose? The more she thought about it, the more likely it seemed. She looked at Brad and the others with even more hostility. I still have so many experiments to do, but I have to run to the Taurus constellation to waste my life. How rude of me. That's too rude. A moment later he finally understood what was going on. Alan turned around and nodded, indicating that he was safe. For an army that did not have any reputation outside, to actually have such luxurious equipment, did Ursa Major constellation's talents already overflow to such an extent? The dazzling silver broadsword emitted a piercingly cold light. Even for a tough guy like Alan, being called Little Alan in public made his face flush red. He secretly cursed his bad luck, but there was nothing he could do. Big Sister must never be offended. This had long become the most unified consensus of all the armies. Everyone feared Sai Lei like a tiger. Big Sister was unreasonable and overbearing. Whoever dared to provoke her would be tired of living. There was no smile on Brad's face. He felt a little breathless. He had long known of Ursa Major constellation's strength, but personally witnessing it, he was still shocked by the astonishing power displayed by Ursa Major. The Taurus constellation was like the luxurious Taurus King carriage, beautiful on the outside but decayed, while the Ursa Major constellation was like the battle carriage, shabby on the outside but filled with vitality and vigor. He did not reveal himself but managed to sort out the chi of the army, the surging killing intent condensed into a ball without any flaws. Expert. But an independent saint was still a saint. Bradley sighed in his heart. In my own territory to be pointed at by the enemy, and my own performance is so clumsy, the Taurus constellation has truly fallen. His gaze was fixed on the enemy's battle formation, sweeping back and forth. Just when everyone thought that Sai Lei was about to come out, a few cold-looking fellows came out first. I'm ready. Alan didn't dare to hesitate. Time seemed to have forgotten to flow at this moment. Behind the helmet, Alan's face revealed a satisfied expression. No matter which direction the enemy came from, they would be able to completely stop them. Although Alan knew that no one would dare to do so, he would never allow himself to make such a mistake. A saint. When the car door closed, Brad and the others seemed to have woken up from a dream. All of them felt as if they had been slapped in the face, and their faces were filled with shock and disbelief. The pressure unique to a saint immediately enveloped the entire area. If we were to say that the strength of the Frost Mountain army was shocking, then the strength of the saints was convincing. Brad took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. He already knew that the mission would not be easy to handle. Sai Lei and the Yifan family had a grudge, thinking that she would not have a good impression of the Taurus constellation. But to him, the Taurus constellation was after all an old tyrant, and was equally important to the Ursa Major constellation. If they truly offended the Taurus constellation, the Ursa Major constellation would become a powerful enemy. Brad believed that Sai Lei would not be able to see that. She would definitely look at the bigger picture and would not go overboard. Wearing high heels hurts my feet, Sai Lei scolded in her heart. The welcoming team that had just woken up from a dream retreated in panic. All of them were in a sorry state like a group of scattered soldiers. Brad could not help but look at the army that seemed to be nailed to the ground, the army that was as strict as a forest of swords. His face was burning up, the disparity was too big. When the few of them appeared, their gazes slowly swept across the entire field. Seeing the carriage that Alan and the rest had prepared, Austin and the rest revealed looks of disdain. Tang Chou then handed the mission to them with ease, with the intention of tempering them. Crack crack crack. Everyone's heart trembled, they all lowered their heads, their faces revealing respectful looks. Alan was the genius young man of Sky Marshal Wolf Academy, and had the air of a great general. Although he was usually gentle and quiet, but in battle he was brave and ferocious. Paired with the taciturn but quick-witted Chen Zilin, the two of them had been competing in Ursa Major constellation, and could be said to be in the limelight. Bradley stared at Sai Lei in a daze. Compared to the image, she was much more beautiful. That damn Tang Tung. Behind him, the gold-shining Taurus King carriage was waiting quietly. All of them were actually saints. Sai Lei ignored him and turned to ask Alan, "Little Alan, where's the carriage?" The sound of teeth chattering came out from Austin's mouth, his face contorted in shock. Little Alan. Born in Lupus constellation, he was poor since young and unexpectedly entered Sky Marshal Wolf Academy. But he was never complacent. He cherished his current life, which was something that he did not even dare to think about in the past. Suddenly, a bright light entered his vision and he could not help but look. "We are actually welcoming such a boorish, impolite, pretentious woman." The curses that came out of his ears made Bradley even more upset. He bellowed, "Shut up." Alan felt weird. How could the Taurus constellation take things too hard to provoke Big Sister? Ursa Major constellation had always been recruiting Aquarius martial artists, but there were only a few that responded. The Aquarius constellation's business atmosphere was dense, and the Aquarius martial artists were generally wealthy, so they naturally disdained the attractive treatment of the Ursa Major constellation. The star door became bright again, and Bradley, who had recovered from the shock, could not help but look at the star door, his heart filled with curiosity. Sai Lei's name was already known to everyone in the Taurus constellation, but Bradley knew even more. He had even seen Sai Lei's image and knew that she was a great beauty. Aren't they independent saints? The aura that the 8 of them are releasing, why is it even more astonishing than the few old fellows living in seclusion in the Taurus palace? Bradley warned himself that Sai Lei might be doing it on purpose, but for some reason his chest felt as though something was stuck there. Rumble, rumble. His gaze stared at the simple carriage. It was a simple and unadorned silver carriage. It was a commonly used battle carriage, mainly used to transport soldiers and resources. Not every army had an Aquarius martial artist. Unless there was an Aquarius martial artist, then the silver Aquarius cabinet and the like would be able to display their greatest use. If not, the carriage would be able to display their greatest use. With a total of 8 saints accompanying them, such a large formation, it was completely able to intimidate thieves and thieves. Truly a group of country bumpkins. Dressed in a black evening gown, it was like a blooming black eerie epiphyllum. The flawless outline, the sharp chin made her face look extremely exquisite and beautiful. Bright red lips, delicate skin, fiery red wavy hair casually draped over her shoulders, revealing a trace of indolence and casualness. Under her long eyelashes, the pair of ice blue eyes were extremely enchanting, yet revealed an unapproachable coldness. The 3 moles under her left eye added a bit of charm and sexiness to the coldness. Austin's mouth was wide open. He stared blankly at the soldiers in front of him, brimming with killing intent. The cold killing intent enveloped him in that moment. He felt as though he was placed in ice and snow. A layer of dense goosebumps appeared on his skin. Sai Lei did not have any intention to give them any face and completely treated them as air. Everyone present was stunned. Everyone had heard of Sai Lei's beauty, but personally witnessing it, the impact they received was even more intense. Even Austin forgot about his fear. He opened his mouth wide and looked at Sai Lei with a silly look, saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth. Thinking about Tang Tian's plan to link the budget of the mechanical sector laboratory to his sleep, Sai Lei clenched his teeth in hatred. Tang Chou knew of Sai Lei's importance to the Ursa Major constellation, and in truth he did not approve of Sai Lei returning to the Taurus constellation. To him, although the Taurus constellation was also part of the 12 ecliptic palaces, but their strength was already unable to contend against the Ursa Major constellation, and might as well flatten them and not take the risk. There was a special person hidden amongst the soldiers, and that was the true core of the enemy. Bradley was extremely shocked. He had never heard of the Frost Mountain army in front of him. It was most likely a newly formed army of the Ursa Major constellation, to actually have such an expert. The leader naturally released a valiant and disdainful aura. He should be the leader of the Frost Mountain army, and the one hidden in the group should be his vice-general. Beautiful Grandmaster Sai Lei. Bradley stepped forward and bowed and said respectfully, Bradley has received orders from the king to welcome Grandmaster's arrival. The carriage is already prepared and will listen to your orders. Who does she think she is? All the noises came to an abrupt stop. Everyone couldn't help but look at Brad. In their opinion, His Royal Highness must have been angered by Sai Lei's actions. Sai Lei did not even look at them. She walked forward slowly. Her voice was as cold as a cold spring on an ice mountain. Is the carriage ready? One after another, silver figures. A few small groups moved forward like lightning. The dazzling changes were like mercury spilling onto the ground, in the stifling atmosphere and the trembling of the mountains. That doesn't make sense. She doesn't even have us in her eyes? Does she think that in front of us, the Taurus constellation, she has anything to be proud of? Who is stronger? Bradley could not be sure, but he had to admit that the Taurus constellation's army no longer had the temperament to contend against them. In front of the dazzling Taurus king carriage, the battle carriage was truly poor and shabby. Many of them were even more proud, as expected of a group of nouveau riche. In front of the aristocratic families with long histories, they have no place to hide. Bradley's heart did not feel good, but he maintained a smile on his face. He raised his hand to indicate that he had no enmity and slowly walked forward to Austin's side. He grabbed Austin, who was trembling all over, causing Bradley's heart to feel even more dismal. He shouted out, "Everyone retreat." He could not help but think about the Honorable Martial Alliance Army, which was also one of the strongest armies in Heaven's Road. The Honorable Martial Alliance Army was similarly organized, but the difference was, the Honorable Martial Alliance Army had an arrogant aura, while the Frost Mountain Army in front of him was filled with killing intent. But is she crazy? At that moment he was suspecting if his deduction was wrong. Sai Lei's performance was completely out of his expectations. Under the complacent gazes of the people, Sai Lei boarded the carriage without hesitation. One was like a skilled aristocrat, the other was like a ruthless outlaw who fought for his life. Although it looked like it was a calm and tranquil arrangement, Bradley knew the difficulty of it. A little bit of reasonableness continuously stacking up would unknowingly pull up the advantage, and such an enemy was the most terrifying. Such a deputy general could only be found by chance and not sought after. They were like a magnifying glass, able to completely display the general's bravery. Chapter 670. On every ship that passed by, the passengers would stare at the huge vortex of light with awe on their faces. A silver fleet was buried in this ball of light, including the famous General Fu Dongku. This was enough to become a legend, to be passed down by others. Bing was stunned. The southern region was bustling with activity recently, but the hottest news was undoubtedly the establishment of the Southern Alliance. Haste makes waste, Bing said. The mysterious Shang continent appeared out of nowhere. No one knew of its origins, but the Southern Alliance was a colossus, causing the other continents of the southern region to immediately feel a bone-chilling cold. Tang Tian, who was rubbing his forehead with a bitter face, tried to use his own thoughts to understand what Bing said. After a while he said, "That means actually your problem is that they are not obedient." Tang Tian listened till his head swelled. Bing spoke very quickly. He could only ask, "What good ideas do you have?" Bing nodded his head inwardly. That's right, if the Honorable Martial Continent were to send their troops to interfere, it will instead be beneficial to the Southern Alliance. It will cause the Southern Alliance to be even more united. No, it might even cause the entire southern region to be united. Bing's brain worked very quickly, and he quickly understood the essence of Tang Tian's suggestion. Using short-term benefits to divide them, let the followers get more benefits, let these allies get enough benefits, let them be willing to give up the initiative. The various continents around the Southern Alliance all requested to join the Southern Alliance, and in a short span of a week, the Southern Alliance's members jumped from 8 to 32 continents. Yes, there are so many pontoon bridges in the southern region, Tang Tian said matter-of-factly. Bing thought of a question. What about the Honorable Martial Continent? With so many treasures appearing, it is impossible for the Honorable Martial Continent to not notice. Bing did not have any suspicions. Tang Tian's intuition was extremely sharp. No one could compare to him, and this point had been proven countless of times. But very quickly he found the obstacle in Tang Tian's idea. It's easy to deal with disobedience. Tang Tian let out a sigh of relief and said with an expression that said it was a piece of cake. Didn't you hear that it's a fight? Isn't that how you train your soldiers? Well, who should I consult with? Pipa? Hand towel? Bing racked his brains. The current Shang continent, with the establishment of the Southern Alliance, had become even more prosperous, and the newly widened estuary had no choice but to widen it again. But with the expansion of the Southern Alliance, the problem of manpower was easily solved, and the various projects were greatly hastened. After that, the vast star continent was dismembered, and the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light was given to the Shang continent, while the Shang continent unexpectedly took out the pontoon bridge, and used it as the Southern Alliance's interest. Tang Tian understood very quickly. That's right, you can't give money for free. You'll only get paid if you work. They'll find out sooner or later anyway. Tang Tian was very straightforward. With a murderous aura, he said, "At most we'll just have a fight. This is the southern region, not the western region." After that, the East Divergent continent was plundered by pirates. The East Divergent palace fell, and from then on the East Divergent continent fell into an unprecedented darkness. The Shang continent's ruthless methods shocked the other continents, and the Southern Alliance was successfully established. But when the matter was slowly revealed, everyone was shocked to realize that the weak Shang continent was actually the mastermind behind the entire matter. What's the point? Bing thought that it was truly unreliable and said unhappily, "The benefits of the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light can make everyone form an alliance, but you want them to give up their armies? That's impossible." Bing felt as though he had swallowed a fly. His face became gloomy. That's true. Tang Tian felt that what Bing said made sense. In his understanding, allies were roughly equivalent to cooperative partners, and cooperative partners naturally could not fight, so what should they do? Tang Tian waved his hand. "We will use other things to bribe them. Star treasures, black gold, whoever is obedient we will give them to them. Whoever follows us, we will let their armies become stronger, and then attack the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light. Whoever puts in more effort we will give them more." This fool's way of thinking. No. Bing's face was gloomy and somewhat helpless. "You know, this is no longer just a war. In truth, I am only good at fighting. Southern region, it's the southern region of the Southern Alliance. That's not ours." Bing blurted out subconsciously. Looking at the list of members of the Southern Alliance, he knew its weight. Suddenly, Tang Tian's eyes lit up. He clapped his hands. "I have an idea. Who will fight? Just by relying on our strength, how can we fight? This is just a long-term goal. It may look good, but no one is stupid. No one will let go of their swords for a long-term goal. Even if we are unable to obtain more benefits, we can at least protect their current benefits." Bing hit the nail on the head. Since when did this fellow become so smart? Then we will bribe them. Tang Tian's entire body released the aura of a nouveau riche, tyrannical and overbearing. "If we can't fight, then we will bribe them. Just like how we used the pontoon bridge to bribe them." Bing, who had already seen his own mistake, did not even bat an eyelid and was completely unmoved. What can this fool think of? He. Bing felt that the sneer in his heart should be out. Only we have these things, we can decide who to give them to or not. Using things that others do not have, to bribe them, is definitely better than money. Oh, just like when I used the Empyrean ice tree spears. Uncle, you did not see the scene, they were all fighting crazily. Tang Tian said happily. "Other than us, no one else has our star treasures. What's this called? Hard currency? No, popular goods? That's what I mean." "Then what name do we use?" Bing unconsciously threw out another question. "We need a name to bribe them. If not, even if we give it to them for free, they will not care." But the leader of the Southern Alliance was not any of the overlords, but an unknown name, the Shang continent. The whirlpool at the estuary of the Shang continent was a symbol of the Shang continent's outstanding military achievements. It has already been achieved. Tang Tian rarely saw such a worried look on Bing's face and asked directly, "Is there a problem?" "A lot." Bing sorted out his thoughts. "We have expanded too quickly and the current Southern Alliance is like a plate of loose sand. Everyone is fighting for themselves. It is extremely chaotic. Each continent has their own benefits, each continent has their own armies. We do not have a unified command and they will not listen to our commands. We have to think of a way to integrate them. That is the biggest problem." A ferocious tiger called the Southern Alliance had quietly awakened. "They are our allies, not our subordinates." Bing reminded Tang Tian. "If we make a move on our allies for no reason, it will incur the retaliation of our allies." Bing felt that he was stupid to actually use such a complicated and profound question to ask a fool. "I have truly been forced to go crazy in this period of time. My brain is fried. to actually do such an unreliable thing. White Sands Continent, Ming Continent, Yuan Continent, Lehigh Continent, just these 4 names were enough to shake the entire southern region, because these 4 continents were the top 20 continents in the southern region. Other than that, there was the Bai family, a rich and powerful family that had existed for tens of thousands of years, and the Suji Worldwide Commerce, one of the top 5 weapon merchants in the Sacred Saint Galaxy. How could they not raise eyebrows? Due to the location of the Rainbow Continent, they were pulled into the Southern Alliance, but their own strength was not to be underestimated. Feasible. Bing rolled his eyes. You think the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light is a cabbage on the road? You think it's so easy? Being stared at by Tang Tian with such a look of disdain, Bing felt extremely terrible, but Tang Tian's thoughts were extremely constructive, and purely for the sake of opposing, it was not something a mature general would do. Tang Tian looked at Bing as though he was looking at an idiot. Won't it be ours if we take it down? To the Sacred Saint Galaxy the name was too foreign, and it was the first time for the majority of them. And those who had some understanding were even more surprised, because they knew how desolate and barren the Shang continent was. There is something forming inside, I can feel it. Tang Tian's expression was serious. The plan to wipe out the pirates was originally very simple. But when star treasures and black gold weapons were displayed in front of everyone, everyone's passion was immediately ignited. Although there were still many spectators, but there were still many who applied. The last sentence was Tang Tian imitating Ling Su's tone. Bing asked, "What is it?" If a person was disobedient and could not be beaten, how could they deal with him? A person's strength could actually reach such a level. I don't know. Tang Tian shook his head, but there was still some excitement in his eyes. It must be something powerful. The southern region had always been a place where heroes stood side by side, and every day there would be new organizations appearing and everyone was used to it. But this time, with the establishment of the Southern Alliance, it was like throwing a heavy bomb into the southern region, attracting the attention of the entire southern region. When Tang Tian shouted out his ambitious words, the entire meeting hall suddenly exploded. Everyone's faces revealed looks of excitement. The southern region had always been a place where heroes stood side by side, and no one had ever shouted out such a slogan before. Everyone was shocked by Tang Tian's ambition, and were deeply attracted by the prospect. Bing shook his head and threw the question to the back of his head. To him, the Vortex Light Regiment was like a war monument erected there. It was more intimidating than any treasure. He came to find Tang Tian for another matter. Deep in his eyes, there was a trace of worry. Our movements are too fast. But he was obviously unable to understand the thoughts of a tyrant. Bing looked at Tang Tian in disbelief. The thorny situation was actually solved by this fool? Did this fool's brain get caught by a door recently? Such a ferocious momentum caused the entire southern region to go silent. Then we'll use more money. Tang Tian used his completely simplified train of thought and said without hesitation. The Shang continent's alliance plan was met with a cold reception, and upon hearing the news, the East Divergent continent quietly sent out armies disguised as pirates to ambush the weak Shang continent. But the Shang continent once again displayed a miracle. The East Divergent Fox Fu Dongku's army died, and the large fleet was completely destroyed. Tang Tian was startled. He raised his head. Isn't it good to be fast? A mysterious and powerful new weapon had surfaced. You need to know how to spend money, don't be stingy. Tang Tian painstakingly concluded and said happily, I know that right now, uncle, you must be worshipping this godlike young lad. All right, don't worship him too much, just a bit of worship will do, that's the advantage of being young. That's right. Bing felt that Tang Tian's summary was on point. Bing found Tang Tian, who was squatting beside the light regiment. Exterminate the pirates. Tang Tian had many bad ideas and said, Lian Bo Jun said the Honorable Martial Continent has brought many pirates into the southern region. Then we will exterminate the pirates. This is an honorable matter. Since pirates are hated by everyone, this is the righteousness of our generation. Bing could not help but exclaim in admiration, what a perfect plan. The vast star continent had recruited people to repair the pontoon bridge in the Sea of Light, causing friction with the Shang continent, and both sides immediately erupted into war. What was surprising was that the vast star continent, which was ranked in the top 10, actually lost to the Shang continent twice, causing the vast star continent to be besieged on all sides. Chapter 671. inside a secret room inside the manor. Star treasures. He did not seem to be ashamed of admitting that he was weak. You guys can't even protect yourselves. Prince Hai's gaze became sharp, but his smile remained warm. The Southern Alliance has recently started to wipe out the pirates. Oh, I understand you guys have nowhere else to go. But his suggestion was met with intense opposition and ridicule from Prince Hai and the other aristocrats. They were clamoring to take back everything that belonged to them, and once again restore the glory of the vast star continent. In their eyes, Yang Ziqing was as timid as a mouse, weak and useless, a person that was like a worm. Many of Yang Ziqing's colleagues and friends kept a respectful distance from him, as though he was infected with the plague and everyone avoided him. Regardless of anything, they could not let the honorable Martial Alliance escape from the quagmire of war with the Leo constellation. What they urgently needed was to quickly raise their strength. Once the Southern Alliance started wiping out the pirates, and with the appearance of large amounts of star treasures, the honorable Martial continent would definitely know that there were people from Heaven's Road that entered the sacred Saint Galaxy. The honorable Martial Alliance only needed to search for them, and they would be able to find out their identities. Prince Hai's pupils constricted. The other party was right. Anyone could join the Southern Alliance, but he could not. The reason why he was able to sit in his position was because he chose to join the aristocratic families that suffered losses. If he were to choose to join the Southern Alliance, the furious supporters would once again kick him down from his position. Since it was not realistic, Tang Tian might as well throw it to the back of his head. He had not sat in this position long enough. Cornered. Madame Ro chuckled. What do you think it means to be cornered for pirates? Even if the Southern Alliance takes over the entire southern region, we can still go to the eastern region. From what I know, the Southern Alliance said that the southern region belongs to the Southern Alliance. I am very curious, where can your continent go? With the rise of the Southern Alliance, the vast star continent had become the biggest loser. With the establishment of the Southern Alliance, He Siji's plan had become the biggest joke. The continent lord's prestige had also plummeted. In the hearts of the commoners, the vast star continent's current situation was all because of the continent lord's tyrannical levies. All of the aristocratic families that had lost a large amount of wealth were filled with anger towards the continent lord. Under Prince Hai's secret control, these angry nobles criticized the continent lord without restraint. General He Siji's illness caused the military to quickly split up. A few of the new commanders had already expressed that the vast star continent needed a new direction. Yang Ziqing really wanted to crack open their heads and see what was inside. Don't these people have a shred of rationality? The vast star continent was gloomy and gloomy. Everything that had happened in this period of time was like a nightmare. However, Tang Tian also had his own ideas. Lady Ro bowed slightly. The smile on her face was similarly gentle and harmless. You are right, if we only rely on the vast star continent, it is definitely not enough to pose a threat to the Southern Alliance. But if you have a powerful ally, then anything is possible. The passageway to the blue world was not that easy to open. That vast and awe-inspiring blue sea, Tang Tian and the rest were able to walk out of it largely due to luck. Although the awakened army was not weak, it was still far from being able to connect the two worlds. He saw the role of experts in war. Obtaining the position of continent lord without shedding a drop of blood, his methods were truly shocking. That's right, I am from the honorable Martial continent. Lady Ro puffed out her chest, her brows revealing arrogance. Prince Hai looked as though he was struck by lightning. He stared at Lady Ro in a daze. He had thought that she definitely had a background, but he never thought that she would actually come from the honorable Martial continent. Her tone was sonorous and powerful, and her expression was firm. Prince Hai's expression did not change. He laughed. Just listen to those words. Who knows, maybe she wants to say, the entire sacred Saint Galaxy belongs to the Southern Alliance. Tang Tian shook his head. Before the passageway to the blue world was opened, such thoughts were too unrealistic. If the experts were gathered together, they could be of great use in the war. This discovery surprised Tang Tian. Yang Ziqing was mentally and physically exhausted, but he knew that the only way out for the vast star continent was to join the Southern Alliance, and only by becoming a part of the Southern Alliance would they be truly safe. Your suggestion is great. His words were forever like a spring breeze. Even when he rejected them, it did not sound harsh at all. But our strength has suffered too much. We are not the Southern Alliance's match. Every step of this group of people was so unexpected and unpredictable. And every step that the vast star continent took seemed to have fallen into their trap. Prince Hai's face was gloomy. After a long while he raised his head. What do you guys want to do? But after 2 hours the gloves stopped absorbing energy. Tang Tian inspected it carefully and realized that the gloves did not evolve. When General He Cg heard the news of the Southern Alliance being established, he fell ill and bedridden, and in the past few days his complexion was getting worse by the day. Everyone knew that the general's lifespan was nearing its end, and many students came to visit him every day. On the contrary, they did not need to worry about the sacred Saint Galaxy. The Honorable Martial Continent's expedition was not an easy task. What can the current vast star continent use to take back everything from the Southern Alliance? He had never paid attention to the purity of star treasures and martial spirits before. He took out a star treasure, which was a Lupus constellation's bronze gloves. He activated the gloves and very quickly the gloves started to absorb energy. Time crawled by and gradually the bronze gloves were dyed with a layer of faint silver light. In the consecutive battles, especially the last battle against Fu Dongku, he had personally participated in it and had a deeper understanding of it. The light vortex was his masterpiece, but what left him with the deepest impression was that he, Jing Hao and Little Fool had brought everyone to break free from the suction of the vortex and escaped. Befriending the distant and attacking the nearby. Between us, we are far enough apart. Our interests do not have any conflict and we have a common enemy. Lady Ro retracted the smile on her face, her gaze as sharp as a sword. The Shang continent. As long as the Shang continent is destroyed, the Southern Alliance will be like a group of beasts that have lost their leader. They will kill each other. Only then can the vast star continent rise again, and with the help of our honorable martial continent, the vast star continent will become even stronger than before. You know that we can do it. And we only want the Shang continent. Tang Tian quickly thought of a simple idea, to help the Leo constellation. But the relationship between the Ursa Major constellation and the Leo constellation was mediocre, and there were some small conflicts between them. It was almost impossible for them to cooperate in such a deep manner, so by bribing the companions of the Southern Alliance, it gave Tang Tian some inspiration. Gradually, Tang Tian grasped a certain pattern. Whether star treasures could evolve or not was related to the martial spirit inside the star treasure. This relationship was not purely about the strength or weakness of the martial spirit, but its purity. The purer the martial spirit, the easier it was to evolve. And to Tang Tian it was as easy as blowing off dust. Their plan to use the Shang continent as a barrier was completely ruined, and the current vast star continent was already fated to tremble under the shadow of the Southern Alliance. Yang Ziqing's perseverance was also in such a situation. His heart was filled with sorrow. Even when he looked back he still could not understand where they started to lose. Everything was like the origins of the people from the Shang continent. It was a mystery. To the vast star continent that was on the verge of death, the turbulent situation was undoubtedly a poison. In truth, Yang Ziqing did not know what he was persevering for. Tang Tian took out a few more star treasures and using the same method he tested a total of 6, and 3 of them successfully evolved. He then tested the silver star treasures and after testing 6, only 1 successfully evolved to a gold star treasure. Jing Hao, Ling Su, Crane, Little Fool, all of them were outstanding and he could even summon magic flute. No, they were not enough. It was a pity that the 5 southern island families were still lacking, although they were saints, but compared to the saints of Heaven's Road they were far weaker. The martial technique system of the Sacred Saint Galaxy was truly too crude. If only the people from the Saint unit were here. There was no need for many. As long as there were 20 of them, it would be enough to sweep everything. Yang Ziqing had aged a lot in the past few days. His hair had turned white, but he did not resign. Prince Hai was 56 years old this year. He had a rather plump figure. His face was white without any facial hair, and his smile was extremely amiable. When the previous continent lord was in office, he did not have any sense of existence and successfully made everyone ignore his existence. Until the opportunity appeared, he was like a venomous snake hiding in the darkness and gave a fatal blow. With regards to a traditional army, Tang Tian knew that he was not cut out for it. But he also understood that the current situation was not something that Bing could handle alone. Since he was the leader of the group, he naturally had to bear more responsibilities. Madam's eyes are truly sharp. Prince Hai decided not to beat around the bush. I think that Madam is not an ordinary pirate. They did not have time to build the new continent lord residence, so they used a local aristocrat's manor. Today the manor was heavily guarded, There were sentries every 10 steps. All of the soldiers were on guard as though they were facing a great enemy. Star treasures could evolve in the Sacred Saint Galaxy. This was something that had been proven long ago. If he could provide the Leo constellation with a batch of strengthened star treasures, wouldn't it be like adding wings to a tiger? At that time they would face an immense pressure. The Honorable Martial Continent would definitely pay any price to destroy the Shang Continent. And Heaven's Road's Ursa Major constellation would also receive the attack of the Honorable Martial Alliance. The attack would definitely be extremely intense, and the Honorable Martial Alliance might even abandon the Leo constellation and attack the Ursa Major constellation. Of course you can say whatever you want, Lady Rose said slowly, but the Southern Alliance is right there behind the vast star continent. In truth, I am curious, why haven't you all joined the Southern Alliance? After that, I understood, anyone can join the Southern Alliance but Prince Hai you cannot. What do I do? Tang Tian scratched his head. It was easier to raise the strength of the martial spirit, but he did not know how to raise the purity of the martial spirit. But he did not think too much about it. Time was of the essence. He took out the Leo constellation treasures that he had prepared, and started to strengthen them one by one. For the sake of appeasing the anger of the aristocratic families, the Continent Lord took the initiative to leave his throne, and gave it to Prince Hai. Lady Ro laughed. He was actually admiring the beauty in front of him. Who would have thought that the alluring beauty was actually a pirate commander? What he was currently trying to figure out was how to strengthen the star treasures. As for how Bing was consolidating the armies of the various continents, Tang Tian did not interfere. Even though he would grab onto any opportunity to mock Uncle Bing, but regarding the matters of the army, Tang Tian tactfully handed it over to Bing. Chapter 672. Seeing Austin's arrival, Jerome was surprised. Austin, why did you come to pristine Gravel City? Bradley had a smile on his face. He followed closely by Aluan's side. In the past few days he had not seen Sai Lei at all. Sai Lei had entered the carriage and never appeared again. All of their requests to meet were rejected. On the command platform, Austin's face revealed a look of shock. The entire army was assembled in a short span of 5 minutes. The troops below the platform were in a strict formation, as though they were cut by blades. They were completely silent and their killing intent pervaded out. Jerome said, "Since Grandmaster Sai Lei has come to our Taurus constellation as a guest, then the problem of safety naturally needs to be solved by us. We will go and welcome Grandmaster Sai Lei. We must definitely let her feel at home." Aluan nodded his head. "I will go and ask Mississippi, did they really do that?" Jerome asked in a low voice. But very quickly his pupils constricted. The enemy's momentum did not have any intention of slowing down. Bradley returned to the diplomatic group with a heart full of worries, and informed everyone that Sai Lei had already agreed to rest in pristine Gravel City for 2 days. Austin volunteered to go first and reminded the pristine Gravel City to make preparations. Aluan's face was calm and unmoved. Aluan's eyes suddenly became cold. The silver broadsword in his hand was raised up high. With the enemy's speed, 800 m was a safe distance. But Bradley never thought that the young generals would be so outstanding. Like Aluan, Bradley could not see any of the arrogance and impulsiveness of a young man. He was as experienced as an old general who had been in the army for decades. Woo-woo. Austin sneered. Bradley? He is still hoping to curry favor with the Ursa Major constellation. The 500 Frost Mountains moved with a rumble. 800 m. A low horn sounded out in the barracks and the Bullhorn army quickly assembled. In the past few days, no matter how much he tried to curry favor, the other party would always remain unmoved. But it was also because he followed Aluan blindly, that even the nobles would often ridicule him as, "Your Majesty's hot face was met with cold buttocks," that Bradley had a deeper understanding of the strength of the Frost Mountain army. Coincidentally, the commander of the Bullhorn army, Jerome, was Austin's childhood playmate, and the two of them had an extremely good relationship. For Jerome to be able to sit in this position, Austin must have spent a lot of effort behind it. Hearing that the pristine Gravel City would be a wasteland for the next few days, Sai Lei thought about it and decided to go to the pristine Gravel City to rest. He was a workaholic. The carriage was filled with all kinds of documents and books. As for the bathroom equipment, it was completely out of her consideration. However, she was a woman after all. She did not feel anything when she was immersed in her work. But now that she was free from work, She could not help but feel happy at the thought of having a good bath in pristine Gravel City. Austin rubbed his hands excitedly. Jerome, what should we do? The only one who remained polite was Brad. Brad might have his own considerations, Jerome interrupted Austin. He didn't want to get involved in the power struggle of the upper echelons. But as a soldier he had the unique arrogance of a soldier, thinking about an unknown army that was actually flaunting their might in the land that he was stationed in. His heart seemed to have ignited a fire. But since I am the commander of the Bullhorn army, no matter what, I will not tolerate other armies to be so impudent in front of me. Splitting up and expanding would ruin everything, and a few cannon fodder added together could not compare to a true elite army. What woman you're talking about? Grandmaster Sai Lei, right? Jerome laughed out loud. The news of Sai Lei returning to the Taurus constellation to visit her relatives had long spread. He winked at Austin. Look at you, you look so shocked. Don't tell me that Grandmaster Sai Lei is not as beautiful as the rumors say? Hearing that Luan agreed to rest in pristine Gravel City, Brad heaved a sigh of relief. Austin said sternly, Jerome, do you think that I will sow discord on such a matter? I am the son of a prince of the Taurus constellation, and have lived on this land for generations. Austin could not help but praise, Jerome, my choice that year was correct. You are a true famous general. Let the bunch of country bumpkins from Ursa Major constellation see what a true elite is. Well said, Jerome. Austin said excitedly, you are the one who is truly worth relying on. Brad has thrown away our Taurus constellation's most precious tradition. Who you? He then imitated Brad's tone. Betting on both sides is always better than betting on one side. They had initially thought that they had come from afar to welcome them, and the other party would definitely be moved to tears. But who knew that the other party treated them like nothing and completely ignored them? The cold treatment that he had received for the past few days caused him to be filled with resentment. Since when had Austin received such disdain? The arrogant look of the army made him even more unhappy, and he decided to teach them a lesson. Maybe we can exchange some ideas. Jerome laughed, then his face darkened and bellowed, move out. How could they not be angry? Stop talking. Austin was furious. Don't let my father grab a strong man to accompany Brad to welcome a woman. Inside the carriage, Sai Lei was dressed in her pajamas, her hair in a mess. She did not have the graceful bearing of a goddess. The table in front of her was filled with all sorts of drafts. She was muttering to herself, her eyes were bloodshot. She had not slept for the past few days. This was Luan's own experience in an unfamiliar environment. When encountering a special situation, the most direct method was to use the word, enemy attack, to warn his comrades. This word was the most effective, and could cause all the soldiers to focus in an instant. Pristine Gravel City is in front. He did not have any expression. A cold light flashed past his eyes. Swoosh, he unsheathed his silver broadsword. Enemy attack. Jerome's eyes flashed with a trace of pride. He had enough pride. The Bullhorn army had been reborn under his hands and became even stronger. Then why do you have such an expression? Jerome asked curiously. He knew what kind of attitude his playmate had towards women. As long as it was a beauty, Austin would always be filled with passion. Luan did not hesitate. The silver broadsword in his hand suddenly pointed downwards and bellowed, rear, protect the carriage, front, follow me and charge. So what if you are a mechanical grandmaster? The other members of the welcoming team all watched from the sidelines and treated them passively. We have prepared a place to rest in the pristine Gravel City. We can rest there for a short period of time. Bradley explained, after the pristine Gravel City for the next 5 days, it will be a wasteland. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Austin understood and chuckled. The aristocrats of the Taurus constellation all held back a fire in their hearts. In their eyes, although the Ursa Major constellation had appeared out of nowhere, but their foundations were too shallow, and they did not have any history to speak of. Such a nouveau riche was always looked down upon by them. They were standing on the Taurus constellation and not the Ursa Major constellation. A silver torrent flew along the streets. The dense footsteps caused the citizens of the pristine Gravel City to stop in their tracks. In the sky above the silver torrent, the 10 saints followed closely behind. Jerome was quiet for a long time. Where's Bradley? Why didn't Bradley say anything? Tang Tian and Bing had not appeared for a long time, causing many people to suspect if there was a huge change in the higher-ups of the Ursa Major constellation. It was a truly powerful army. They had strict discipline, would never tire, would never slack, would never lose their vigilance, their meticulous execution. Bradley would sometimes feel that they were inflexible and making a mountain out of a molehill. But he had to admit that the Taurus constellation did not have any army that could compare to the army in front of him that was born for war. Austin had been to the pristine gravel city before as one of the important towns of the Taurus constellation's Bullhorn region. The pristine gravel city had an elite army stationed there, the Bullhorn Army. The Bullhorn Army was one of the most elite armies of the Taurus constellation. They were well-equipped and powerful and had never been defeated. When Bradley was splitting up the mechanical army, he sighed. Ursa Major constellation had the two most illustrious armies. One was the Lupus army led by Tang Yi, and the other was the mechanical army led by Bing. For such an elite and illustrious army, they should try their best to maintain their traditions. Traditions determined the temperament of the army, and were the most precious wealth of an elite army. He knew that recently the Ursa Major constellation had a few newly formed armies, and all of these armies without exception were split out from the mechanical army. Following the fading of Bing, a new generation emerged and the mechanical army was split up and expanded into a few armies. The Ursa Major constellation had a tradition of valuing the young, and all of their higher-ups were extremely young, and the only one that could be called an old general was the Plateau Army's Ta Dun. Austin shook his head. That's not it. Sai Lei is the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. It is not that there are no benefits to coming out, at least no one is urging me to sleep. Sai Lei stuck out her tongue and continued to immerse herself in her work. With that she went to the carriage and reported softly. In the distance, a silver torrent was sweeping over. They are bullying us too much. Austin's face was ashen as he described everything that had happened in the past few days, adding oil and vinegar. Aluan suddenly stopped, the ground trembled slightly. He immediately judged that there was a group of people rushing over. All of them were silver armors. The quality of their equipment was rarely seen in the entire Heavens Road. Jerome's face also became ugly, regardless of how great Grandmaster Sai Lei was. They were in the Taurus constellation. How could they allow others to strut around here? 1500 m, 1200 m, 10,000 m. Producing armors was a unique characteristic of the Taurus constellation. The armors of the Taurus constellation were easy to recognize, because their helmets had a pair of sharp bull horns. To the other constellations the number of armors was pitiful, but the Taurus constellation could use armors to equip an army. Austin naturally had ill intentions. The Bullhorn army was a heavy armor army, and every one of them wore a silver rank Taurus armor. Aluan's report interrupted her work. Jerome raised his eyebrows and said arrogantly, Bradley is looking down on himself too much. Since when did our Taurus constellation fall to the point where we need to curry favor with the Ursa Major constellation? Chapter 673. Suddenly Jerome's eyes constricted. In that moment he had made a decision. Even if he had to be punished, he wanted to teach the group of people who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth a lesson. Before he could react, Aluan's roar exploded out. 500 sword auras flowed back to their origin, bringing forth dazzling light scars that entered Aluan's sword. They have 10 saints. Should we go and help? Meng Ta went to the carriage and asked. Seeing the arrival of the Bullhorn army, Bradley could not help but reveal a smile. Jerome is truly outstanding. The silver torrent surged forward in an orderly formation with an impressive momentum, causing Bradley, who had been gloomy for the past few days, to feel much better. My Taurus constellation also has an elite division and a general that can fight. Everyone who was sprinting had their waists slightly bent. Who can stop this imposing aura? It was not only Bradley, the other aristocrats beside him all revealed pleased looks. Rear, protect the carriage. Front, follow me and charge. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The silver torrent of the Bullhorn army was like lightning, causing the ground to tremble. Their speed was extremely fast. We need to teach this group of nouveau riche a lesson. The excited people were already speaking incoherently. Bradley knew that everyone had been agitated for the past few days and smiled. He also felt that giving Sai Lei and the rest a show of strength was not a bad idea, to suppress the arrogance of the Frost Mountain army, and prevent them from being arrogant. A dazzling light aura blossomed as though the sun had exploded. The dazzling light aura caused the entire place to turn white. Everyone stepped out at the same time. The astonishing power of the Frost Mountain was displayed. It was as though 500 heavy hammers had smashed onto the ground at the same time. Aluan's entire body was enveloped by the congealed light aura. As though a god of war had descended, the tyrannical aura was like empty tide pressing down on them, causing them to suffocate. To do such a thing in the territory of the Taurus constellation, they were completely disregarding the master. But Aluan's attack caused them to immediately throw their plans to the back of their heads. Aluan's roar was like thunder exploding above everyone's head. Just like its name, Mountain represented its powerful strength, while Frost represented the sharpness of the sword. The distance between the two parties was quickly shrinking. But Jerome is doing well. Out of the 12 ecliptic palaces, the one who was in the most similar situation to the Taurus constellation was the Aries constellation. But the Aries constellation already had a true strong martial artist, Ling Su. With the inheritance of the silver frost mounts and the goat horn seal in his hands. Although he did not return to the Aries constellation, but Ling Su had become the idol of many of the Aries constellation. Relax your wrist. But once Qin Zilin was not around, this difference would be reflected immediately. The feeling of not being smooth was like a rusty gear without oil. Alan was like a completely different person when he was in battle mode. His roars were everywhere, full of passion. The soldiers under his command liked his roars very much. Although they were already familiar with those things, the roar of their leader would raise their morale. It would make them feel as though there was a ball of fire burning in their chest. The ground sank again and he bounced off, smashing into the ground once more. Alan immediately noticed that his opponent had begun his final sprint. He grinned and roared, "Get ready in 3 steps." The blood drained from the faces of the Taurus constellation nobles. Their expressions were filled with fear and confusion. If it was said that the Bullhorn army could feel the ground trembling when they were charging, then they felt as though they were standing on top of a drum, unable to stand stably. They fell to the ground and a few of the more cowardly ones immediately lost control of their bowels. What tactic is that? Kill. Jerome's eyes were scorched. A gigantic silver figure shot out from the pit. It was as fast as lightning, instantly appearing 60 m away and smashing heavily into the ground. Before he could even make a sound, a loud bang came out. All sorts of light auras appeared in front of the sword auras. These guys. 500 frost mountains stepped on the ground at the same time, causing a huge tremor, causing everyone to be unable to stand stably. The low rumbling sound caused their ears to buzz, and the dust that was raised covered the sky. Bang. Bradley was secretly paying attention to the Aries constellation's intelligence department. The Aries constellation was moving in the dark. All of the young men who were dissatisfied with the Black Feathers mounts were secretly moving about, and it was said that they were planning to rebuild the Silver Frost mounts. There were rumors saying that the leader of the new Silver Frost mounts was Ling Su. Wait a minute. Master Jerome is truly outstanding. Give him some time, maybe he can recreate the Taurus army. Ordinary sword auras were all sharp whistling sounds, but the sword aura's whistling sound seemed to be formed from countless of vibrating sounds, crushing down on everyone's hearts, causing every inch of their skin to tremble and their scalps to go numb. Ursa Major constellation's newest mechanical spirit weapon was the condensation of the newest technology of the Ursa Major constellation's mechanical laboratory, and Sai Lei had poured a lot of effort into it. It was smaller in size, stronger and more agile. And before that Saint armor, that Sai Lei was planning to use on Saints appeared, it was the strongest mechanical spirit weapon. Bang. At least the Aries constellation has Ling Su. Although they only had 8 Saints and the Bullhorn army had 10, but Meng Ta was not afraid in this period of time, relying on the big tree that was the Ursa Major constellation, their strength had soared by leaps and bounds. Rumble rumble. These 3 steps were as fast as lightning and as heavy as thunder. The 3 steps only produced one sound, causing everyone's ears to blur, and the Frost Mountain army was already 300 m away. Relax your shoulders. Pay attention to your steps. Control your breathing rhythm. The last step was to reach the pinnacle of strength. Bang. But following the flow of time, the Taurus constellation declined, the Taurus army shrunk day by day, the number of gold armors became lesser and lesser, and the strongest heavy armor army in history also disappeared in the river of time. To any of the knowledgeable people of the Taurus constellation, the revival of the Taurus army was their ultimate goal. Let them experience what it means to be an elite. Charge with all your might. The terrifying white light seemed to isolate all sound, causing everyone to sink into it. The 500 of them sprinted, their aura blended together without any leakage. It was a true flowing mercury. Looking down from the sky, they were shocked to realize that the area where Aluan and the rest were at had sunk by half a meter, forming a gigantic and flat crater. After a few seconds, the shocked Jerome's vision returned to normal, while his troops were swaying left and right. 10 saints had taken action at the same time, and were only able to block the sword, but the aftershock of the power was enough to tear their formation, causing them to be in chaos. 3 steps kill Frost Mountain. Bradley turned his head to look at the Frost Mountain army complacently. He wanted to see what expression the arrogant fellows had on their faces. His gaze landed on Aluan and he could not help but laugh. All of them were covered up tightly. How could he see their expressions? It was a pity. Jerome's eyes constricted. He had initially planned to stop at a distance of 300 m away from the enemy, but he did not expect for them to similarly rush towards them. But following that, a burst of rage surged. He had completely believed Austin's words. The enemy was truly too arrogant. Kill them. Time seemed to have stopped at that moment. The 500 Frost Mountains soared into the sky, and instantly appeared 30 m high in the sky. The 500 Frost Mountains held onto their swords with both hands, raising them up high. The Frost Mountains that were not bloated at all at that moment, were brimming with extreme power and beauty, as though they were 500 muscular warriors, raising their swords in anger. He did not realize that unknowingly, the formless pressure that the Frost Mountain army had on him had actually reached such a level. Aluan was also filled with confidence in the Frost Mountains. He was unable to understand what the saint armor that Miss Siley was talking about was like. He felt that the Frost Mountains were already the strongest mechanical spirit weapons in the world. Aluan's sword aura exploded forth. The 300 m wide sword aura released an astonishing tyrannical aura, as though it wanted to split the heaven and earth apart. The Taurus constellation has sunk for too long, Bradley sighed in his heart. They were stuck in a position that was neither up nor down, causing the Taurus constellation to lose their motivation to advance. The higher-ups were addicted to enjoyment and fun, causing the barbarian bull to become thinner and weaker. One after another, silver figures shot out like arrows from the dust in the sky. Before he could react, a thunderous roar came out from the front. Kill! Their figures suddenly disappeared and appeared at the front of the army at the same time. Aluan's roar broke the silence. The 500 silver broadswords, borrowing the momentum from the dive, slashed downwards. The first to have a change in expression were the saints of the Bullhorn army. They were different from Jerome. They were relatively calm. Most of their attention was on the 8 saints around the carriage. The aura that the 8 saints emitted made them feel anxious and bewildered. They initially did not plan to take action. On one hand, they thought that Jerome was enough to handle them. On the other hand, they did not wish to alarm the saints. That was the Taurus constellation's most powerful period, and the current day, it was unimaginable for them to have 160 gold armors. Bradley's face immediately became as white as paper. The puzzlement on his face turned into endless fear. No need. Siley said lazily, it is such a good chance to fight. Let's see if the Frost Mountains have any room to improve. Jerome was shocked. He only felt his vision blurring, and the opponent was actually less than 300 m away from them. It's too spectacular. Oh my god, it truly is a silver torrent. It's too powerful. The order that was filled with anger immediately spread through the entire army, and the Bullhorn army's speed suddenly increased. 3 steps. In front of them, the 500 Frost Mountains held onto their swords and stood straight, like 500 war god statues. Their entire bodies were covered in mist, emitting a blazing fighting intent. Bradley was at a loss, but the surrounding cheers caused him to raise his spirits. Frost Mountains. Their army had continuously won against other armies in the internal battles, and thus were allowed to be the first to be equipped with the Frost Mountains, and their army was named the Frost Mountain Army, causing the other armies to be extremely jealous, and that was Aluan's proudest achievement. The gold armor was the symbol of the Taurus army. The pair of gold horns released a dazzling light aura that shook heaven's road. 10 saints took action at the same time. While sprinting, their silver broadswords hung by their sides, with the sword tips pointing to the ground. And their vice-commander was like invisible air without any sense of existence. Aluan, who received the counterattack, only felt a surge of power that could tear him apart surging towards him, and at the same time, Qinzi Shuang, who was behind him, suddenly released a light aura. The surging wave of power in front of him seemed to have been dismembered, splitting into countless parts and dispersing into the troops. Hearing the discussions around him, Bradley's heart moved. Just like the Aries constellation's silver frost mounts, in the history of the Taurus constellation, there was once a famous army that shook heaven's road, the Taurus army. This Taurus army was the strongest heavy armor army in history. They were all dressed in the Taurus constellation's gold armor and were invincible. Suddenly, the smile on his face froze, because he saw Alun, who was at the front of the army, suddenly unsheathing his silver broadsword. Bang! Chapter 674. Bullard raised his head, his tears had already stopped. Deep in his eyes, one could still see the deep pain and sorrow, but his face revealed an unwavering determination. As long as there is a trace of hope, even if Bullard's body is crushed, I will not hesitate. I just want to see the famous Taurus army of the past, if there are any seeds left, if there is any hope of reviving it. The attack that was dismembered by Chen Zilin entered Alun's body, but it did not move the man in the slightest. Bullard's face was gloomy as he requested to see Sai Lei, who did not reject him. Sai Lei's words caused Bullard, who was about to turn, to stop. Is that so? Sai Lei replied lazily. They are just doing their duty to protect my safety. Is there a problem? But your honorable army's actions are not friendly. Bullard choked. No one spoke. The vast wilderness was dead silent. Only the wind blew past, dispersing the heat emitted from the Frost Mountain soldiers. Suddenly, rumble, rumble. I will join. Bullard could no longer care about anything else. He knelt down on the ground and begged Sai Lei. He was so excited that he spoke incoherently. Please let me join. Regardless of the conditions, I will join. I want to revive the Taurus army. I want to revive the Taurus army. The Taurus constellation exploded like a volcano. They were all enraged, scolding and shouting that they would teach Tang Tian a lesson. This army is already one of your strongest armies. Sai Lei acted as though he did not see Bullard's expression and continued, to be defeated in 1 round. Oh, I cannot underestimate you. Maybe you can hold on for 2 rounds. Those who offend the diplomatic group, kill them. Sai Lei's eyes became cold. He said indifferently, what does the life or death of the Taurus constellation have to do with me? Don't talk about the Yifan family. I did not find trouble with them, and they should be thanking the heavens. If you are still immersed in the glory of your ancestors, then there is no need for us to talk. A broken family that is destined to die. Don't waste my time. But this was the Taurus constellation. It was their territory. Not everyone can understand you. Maybe you will be mocked, you might lose your current position, lose everything, but in the end it will all be for naught and you will not gain anything. The sound of footsteps broke the silence. Alan dropped this sentence in a low voice, and without looking at Jerome, he turned around and returned to the team. Welcome. By God. What happened to His Highness? This is too embarrassing. You can revive the Taurus army? Amidst the seemingly solidified silver, a mountain-like figure slowly walked forward. Brad's mouth was filled with bitterness. He wanted to loudly refute the other party, but when the thousands of words reached his throat, they seemed to be blocked by something and he couldn't say anything. He felt a fire burning in his chest. All the compromises and insider information he knew were like tongues of flame licking at his heart. Alun looked at the messy enemies in front of him without saying a word. He maintained a defensive stance. The entire army maintained the same offensive stance. This was to increase the pressure on the enemies. Alun stopped when he was still 100 feet away from his opponent. The tip of the silver broadsword sank into the soil. Sai Lei's voice came from above. Your actions are provoking us. Brad stared at Sai Lei, his tone cold. Brad's entire body trembled. He raised his head in disbelief and stammered, the Taurus army. Revive the Taurus army. That was Alun. Sai Lei looked at Brad in shock. She never thought that in the Taurus constellation that she thought was rotten beyond redemption, there would actually be someone who held on to his dreams, and was willing to disregard everything and throw away his dignity to beg for his dreams. They just wanted to quickly welcome your side but were attacked by your side. Furthermore, this is the Taurus constellation. Brad said expressionlessly, what do we need to do? Whose permission do we need? Sai Lei ignored him and muttered to herself, but what does that have to do with me? Whether the Taurus army revives or not, it has nothing to do with me. Damn it. She stood in the carriage and stared at Brad. The soldiers had not recovered from the shock, and Jerome's pupils that had lost focus had regained some of their spirit. Sai Lei was moved, seeing Brad's agitated and uncontrollable face. She secretly sighed in her heart. Everyone looked over in shock. Seeing Brad, who had lost control of himself, after a moment of silence, they went into an uproar. Their faces revealed expressions of embarrassment, anger, disdain, shame. Some of them could not help but use their sleeves to cover their faces. He was incoherent, he sobbed silently, his tears falling onto the ground. Sai Lei's words were like a sword that pierced into Brad's chest. Brad's face turned green and red. A strong impulse surged in his heart and he turned and left. Jerome's face was pale white. He was not a mediocre person. The temperament of the enemy in front of him caused his heart to tremble in fear, and he actually could not muster up any courage to resist. At the moment, his heart was filled with shame and defeat. The Bullhorn army that he had painstakingly trained was actually unable to withstand a single blow, and was defeated by a nameless army in one move. They are here to humiliate us. They do not have any sincerity at all. Without any sincerity, we will not be able to exchange for anything. If this goes on, we will only be humiliated by them for nothing. A straight sword scar appeared in front of the Bullhorn army. It was the same silver color, but they were clearly separated, causing all of the Taurus men who witnessed the scene to feel pain in their eyes. They wanted to close their eyes, but it was as though the scene was magical. They were unable to do so and could only watch in a daze. You came here just to humiliate us? Brad's face was flushed red. He squeezed the words out from his teeth, his eyes spewing fire. This is... Brad did not feel anything. He only had Sai Lei in his eyes and asked excitedly, "You can truly revive the Taurus army?" Jerome's blood surged to his head. His face was flushed red, to the point that blood was about to seep out. He clenched his fists tightly, his entire body trembling with anger. It was as though the line was drawn in his heart. The other party is warning us not to cross that line. But Alun did not let his guard down. If not for the fact that they were in the other party's territory, he would definitely have used the opportunity to kill them, and completely eliminate the other party, completely killing the danger in its cradle. Sai Lei laughed sweetly and spoke with a profound meaning. "You guys begged me to come." Sai Lei interrupted Brad. She glanced at him and revealed a faint ridicule. "You want me to leave now? That's great. I am very tight on time. I still have a few experiments to do. If the Taurus constellation does not welcome me, I will immediately return. Everyone, do not waste time. Are you guys destined to die?" "Did you hear what they said? I only have a thought in my mind. For a thought, is it worth it for you to do this?" They were at a loss. Fear, shock, loss, despair, defeat were written all over their faces. Their expressions were sluggish and their lips were trembling. Even the 10 saints who had blocked the 3-step kill were all silent at this moment, their arms trembling non-stop. She had only seen such passion in the Ursa Major constellation, and she had once thought that it was a temperament that only the Ursa Major constellation had. "It is just a thought of mine," Sai Lei said honestly. "The Taurus army has been dead for too many years. Whether or not it can revive, I do not know. The most important thing for the Taurus army is the gold armor. I have some thoughts about it, but just the armor alone is not enough." The agitated Brad continued to walk towards Sai Lei. Chi. His body was suddenly covered with crisscrossing small wounds, blood splattered everywhere. Meng Ta and the rest sealed Chi was as sharp as knives. Brad suddenly rushed forward. He was extremely agitated, every muscle in his body was trembling. But when he took half a step, he was locked down by the biting cold killing intent. Meng Ta and the rest who were beside the carriage stared at Brad with unkind expressions. Alun's pupils were as deep as a bottomless abyss. Such a reckless and flamboyant attack did not cause any ripples in the abyss. "You're wrong. This is the Taurus constellation, just that it is now," Sai Lei said lazily. "With the current state of the Taurus constellation, it is hard to say how many years it can last. I only have one goal for coming to the Taurus constellation. Revive the Taurus army? Such a nonsensical thing. Your Highness actually believes it to be true. You are too naive." In that moment he was at a loss and did not know what to do. Brad raised his head. He did not avoid Sai Lei's gaze. Like a soldier, he replied loudly, "There is no price to pay for not having a dream. I am willing to pay any price." His wrist that was holding onto the silver broadsword trembled. Chi, the sharp sword aura effortlessly cut through the ground, like a paper knife cutting through a piece of paper. It extended far into the distance. Resolute and fearless, valiant and calm, the style of a great general. Jerome's heart trembled. There was a regiment of flames burning in his eyes. Although the enemy's general's face was sluggish and shocked, the soldiers' faces were filled with fear and numbness. It showed that the army had already lost its fighting strength. Not everyone is willing to sink and rot. Brad's body that was lying on the ground trembled, his fists were clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Those words were as sharp as blades. He did not move at all, like a statue. He did not care. Because of Qin Zilin's existence, he could try out some dangerous and powerful attacks, and the 3 steps kill was one such masterpiece. He had absolute trust in Qin Zilin, causing the two of them to have a tacit understanding. Without any worries, Alun was like a ferocious beast. The perseverance and bravery of the lupus man was displayed vividly and vividly. Humiliate you guys. No, no, no. Sai Lei stood up. She stood on the carriage and looked down, her face revealing an indescribable ridicule. Are you guys worth my humiliation? You guys have nothing, and even the wealth that your ancestors have left for you is starting to run out. You guys are wearing patched gowns and still lie to yourselves with a straight face, saying that it is the same as in the past, so luxurious and elegant. These people, are you guys worth my humiliation? That's right. Does your highness think that he is the only one who cares about the Taurus constellation? To be so disrespectful, that is not right. She raised her hand, signaling Meng Ta and the rest to not make a move. Brad laughed in anger. Oh, don't tell me the Ursa Major constellation wants to dip their fingers into my Taurus constellation? Although Miss Sai Lei is our esteemed guest, but there is a limit to our tolerance. Chapter 675. Returning to his residence, Crane thought about Sagittarius constellation. No matter what, the Empress was his own aunt. Sagittarius constellation was like a weaker version of Leo constellation in the 12 ecliptic palaces. They were strong in battle, but their resources and economy were not outstanding. As for his aunt, she basically didn't care about politics at all. Seeing Ling Su, who had completely gone berserk, Tang Tian immediately kept the star treasures and slipped away, while Crane and Jing Hao were long gone. Tang Tian looked at the floating star treasures in front of him complacently. They were all Leo constellation star treasures. The densely packed star treasures were all dazzling with enchanting light auras. The majority of them had a faint gold color, and the dazzling gold star treasures numbered up to 15. The war was about to enter an extremely bitter stage. In their eyes, although Andre and the rest were valiant and extraordinary, but compared to Leon, who personally created the huge empire, they were still lacking. Countless snow-white figures shuttled back and forth between the mountains, like agile white cranes, causing the students to palpitate with excitement, their hearts yearning. They gradually found the knack to upgrade the star treasures. 200 pieces, none of them were gold star treasures, but currently 15 of them were gold star treasures. The remaining 180 star treasures, half of them had stepped into the pseudo-gold rank, and the remaining half were all silver quality. Honorable Martial Alliance is not only the enemy of Ursa Major constellation, it is the enemy of the entire Heaven's Road. It was formed to prepare for the sacred Saint Galaxy to attack Heaven's Road. We have continuously inquired about the opening time of the Star Door, and finally had some results. 10 years later, the sacred Saint Galaxy will open the Star Door to Heaven's Road, and the war between the two worlds will be unavoidable. Heaven's Road is rich in spirits, and is destined to become their land of plunder. The 12 ecliptic palaces had a long history and were rich and powerful, but in the recent 100 years, the most dazzling constellation was definitely Leo constellation. Today was the first day of school in Heavenly Crane Academy. The great clan elder muttered to himself he never thought that in his lifetime he would be able to personally witness such a scene. Even if he were to die now, he would be able to rest in peace. Jing Hao consoled himself. After finishing, he wrote another letter to the great clan elder, recording down his recent enlightenment on the Crane sect's martial techniques in detail. The entire constellation system of Heaven's Road was built on star treasures, and its importance was without a doubt. 2 lunatics. Crane looked at the 2 people who were making a fuss and covered his face as he could not bear to watch. These 2 fellows, can't they be more normal? It will lower the image of our Ursa Major constellation and the Shang continent. The others were all dumbfounded. Tang Tian felt that his idea was a complete mess. Beside him were Ling Su, Jing Hao and Crane. The few of them were so tired that they could not even move their fingers, lying paralyzed in the sea of energy, motionless like corpses. The few of them had been forced by Tang Tian to work on the secret treasures, so they were all exhausted. Crazy Tang, why don't we set up an ambush on his path and kill Leong? The great elder looked down at the foot of the mountain with a smile. The Crane sect deeply felt Tang Tian's care, and decided to establish the Heavenly Crane Academy, and publicly impart the Crane sect's martial techniques to the Ursa Major constellation. Only he can go back. Crane's face was filled with helplessness. That fellow's mental illness is incurable, but I heard that Lei Ong is not normal either. I hope they do not fight. That scene is too beautiful. I do not dare to think about it. And the one who gave it was Lei Ong. He brought his companions, cut through the thorns and thorns, entered deep into dangerous situations, and established the current Leo constellation. Such glory could be compared to any hero in history. He was hailed as the Lion King, and others called him Heavenly Emperor Lei Ong. The Heavenly Crane Mountain was as precipitous as a sword. The side of the mountain looked as though it was sliced off by a sword. It was as smooth as a mirror. On it were the words, Heavenly Crane Academy. They were lively and lively as though they were riding the wind. When the Lion King Lei Ong ruled the world, he was not even born yet, and grew up listening to the legendary hero's glorious achievements. It was not only him. When Jing Hao and the rest thought about the Lion King Lei Ong, they could not help but become quiet. With the last sentence, Tang Tian's expression was filled with ferocity. That's right, ancestor above, protect my Crane sect. Has he been acting weird recently? Jing Hao muttered. He was from the Honorable Martial Alliance and had a deeper understanding of Lei Ong, the #1 enemy of the Honorable Martial Alliance. The opening of the Heavenly Crane Academy had caused an uproar in the Ursa Major constellation. In the past, no one knew of the Crane sect's decline, but the current Crane was one of the big shots of the Ursa Major constellation. Bear King Tang Tian had personally admitted that he had trained in the Crane sect's martial techniques, adding that the Crane sect's martial techniques were natural and unrestrained. The young people flocked to it like ducks. He did not have many Leo constellation star treasures. Even if he allowed the Ursa Major constellation to secretly purchase them, he only had 200 pieces, and most of them were of ordinary quality. Leo constellation's star treasures were rarely passed down. Lei Ang's subordinates were a group of battle maniacs. Their desire for the treasures was extremely strong, and with so many people, it was not enough for them to digest. If the star treasures were to be placed in Heaven's Road, it would definitely shake the entire Heaven's Road. To the Leo constellation, it was already considered a strategic grade of resources. Star treasures were the foundation of any constellation's fighting strength. Even the spirit treasures used by saints were refined from star treasures. 15 gold-rank star treasures, every commander could have one, and just this point would allow the Leo constellation's fighting strength to rise to a new level. The great clan elder was silent for a moment, then said solemnly, Crane is so young and has been fighting endlessly outside to help our Crane sect win this blessed land. We cannot stay behind and enjoy our blessings with a clear conscience. The disciples of the Crane sect, as long as they have the strength of a gold-ranked martial artist, they must go to the various armies. The future of the Ursa Major constellation, the future of my Crane sect, requires us to work together to protect it. At this point, both parties did not have any space to retreat or compromise, because both parties already completely understood the other party's intentions and their own situation. The news that they came from Heaven's Road was most likely known by the Honorable Martial Continent, and following that, they would definitely launch a devastating attack on the Shang continent. And as the representative of the Honorable Martial Continent in Heaven's Road, the Honorable Martial Alliance's retaliation against the Ursa Major constellation would be unprecedentedly ferocious. Jing Hao trembled. He had never felt that he was a coward, but compared to Crazy Tang he was still lacking. Alright, there will always be a difference between a normal person and a crazy young man. Sagittarius constellation had people guarding 3 Spirit City, and the letter could quickly be sent to the Empress. Below the mountain gate, there was a hubbub of voices. The explosive scene caused the entire Crane sect to laugh from ear to ear. No one expected for it to be so explosive. The entire Crane sect seemed to have moved out. When Lei Ong sees all these treasures, he will definitely be dumbstruck. No one cared about him. No, fight, I want to fight. Which one of you will fight with me? Where is he? After a moment, Jing Hao, who had recovered from the shock, asked curiously, will this method really work? The surrounding people all felt a sense of sorrow in their hearts. The decline of the Crane sect seemed to have happened yesterday, and no one was willing to return to it. Following his continuous improvement of the Crane sect's martial techniques, the Crane sect became stronger at an astonishing speed. The Crane sect followed the traditions of the ancient sects, although their martial techniques had changed beyond recognition, but the traditions did not disappear, and the disciples' foundations were extremely sturdy and deep. When Crane found the true teachings and sent them to the Crane sect once again regained their confidence and hope. The Crane sect that had been silent for hundreds of years had an even stronger desire. Pierce them to death, pierce them to death, pierce them to death. Everyone was deeply moved, thinking about the scene of Tang Tian and Lei Ong fighting. Ling Su, who had jumped up, immediately fell into a berserk state without any warning. He was extremely excited, his eyes lit up, his orange pupils burning with flames. He was completely ignited by Tang Tian's words. He could not wait to kill his way into Leo Constellation. Tang Tian's idea was too awesome. That was Leong, that was the Lion King. If I can defeat him, I will definitely be the strongest martial artist in the world. Crazy Tang hoped to unite with the 12 ecliptic palaces and fight against the Honorable Martial Alliance together. Crane had carefully analyzed Crazy Tang's plan and felt that the possibility of success was very high. Because Crazy Tang had a bargaining chip that no one else could provide and could strengthen star treasures. But no one dared to look down on Sagittarius constellation. The Empress, who did not care about politics, was actually one of the strongest martial artists. Kill Leong. Flatten Leo constellation. He started to write a letter to his Empress aunt, suggesting for her to send a batch of Sagittarius constellation star treasures to 3 Spirit City, suggesting for her to cooperate with Ursa Major constellation, analyzing the pros and cons, and explaining the history of the Honorable Martial Alliance in detail. Has Crazy Tang already thought of that? Crane did not know what kind of influence he could have on his aunt, but he still earnestly finished writing the letter. Yes. Everyone bowed. It is all thanks to Crane. All of the higher-ups of the Honorable Martial Alliance were filled with fear towards the Lion King, even though the Lion King was gradually getting old. He even knew that the higher-ups of the Honorable Martial Alliance always had a saying, that when the Lion King died, it would be the best time to attack the Leo constellation. Writing till here, Crane suddenly realized the war between them and the Honorable Martial Continent, including Heaven's Road and the Honorable Martial Alliance, had entered a whole new stage. Crane roused himself and continued to write. It's not a big deal. Tang Tian snorted, his eyes flashing with a strange light aura. If he does not agree, we will do it alone. If he is up to no good, we will defeat him. Ling Su's blood was boiling. Every pore on his body was releasing a scorching fighting intent. He was in a state of madness. If the 12 ecliptic palaces were the most dazzling constellations in Heaven's Road, then Leo constellation was like the sun, radiating with boundless radiance. No one had the confidence to convince such a powerful existence. Among the armies of Ursa Major constellation, a legendary name was born, Sword Envoy Crane. The revival of the Crane sect is the fortune of my generation. Crane knew of Crazy Tang's plan. Ursa Major constellation had a dense energy concentration, and Tang Tian had trained in the Crane sect's martial techniques in the past. So Crane held an important position in Ursa Major constellation, and the Crane sect was living a comfortable life. They were like sponges that greedily absorbed nourishment. The strict rules and atmosphere of the sect also won them more respect. Ling Su was startled for a moment, then started to look around, looking for an opponent to fight with. Crazy Tang, I will hide behind you and listen to you smashing the cup as a signal. I will stab him to death with my spear. The mountain gate was filled with people. It should be useful, but we will only know after we meet Leong. Tang Tian scratched his chin. In truth, he was not too sure. Jing Hao had the same feeling. Are we really going to let him go and negotiate with Leong? Chapter 676. All of the commanders revealed their brilliance. All of these battle maniacs were not only unafraid of war, but were instead filled with fanaticism towards war. What support? The firepower that they could control from the warship weapons could easily reach 3 times of the highest standard firepower of the warship weapons. Such an astonishing number. If it truly appeared in the hands of a war general, it would completely topple the state of war. Tang Tian was startled. No one liked to be suppressed by others. Furthermore, it was the high and mighty Saint unit. The entire Saint unit was filled with the thirst to prove their worth. Hearing Tang Tian's orders, they could not help but clench their fists tightly, filled with fighting spirit. Tang Tian glanced back at them complacently. Everyone who personally witnessed the scene were overwhelmed with shock. Even the slowest person knew that something important had happened in Ursa Major constellation. The commanders were surprised. Since the start, Bing had always been the commander of all the battles, and Tang Tian had never interfered in the battles. He had always fought at the front lines, relying on his powerful individual strength. They were in their prime. How could they be willing to fall behind? Everyone's spirits were roused. They started to plan in their hearts. It was not realistic to rely on Ursa Major Constellation to fight against the Honorable Martial Alliance. Although Ursa Major Constellation's strength had grown a lot in the past 2 years, but if not for Leo Constellation dragging the Honorable Martial Alliance, their days would definitely not be so good. Everyone's eyes started to release a green light aura. Since the start, the Saint Unit had been rather idle in Ursa Major Constellation. The Saint Unit's treatment was extremely good. The various training conditions were the most outstanding. There were no harsh conditions, attracting many independent saints to join. And in the past few years, the Saint Unit had been expanding rapidly. But they did not dare to make any rash moves. The current Three-Spirit City had long been forged by Ursa Major Constellation like an iron bucket. Ever since the ambush, Three-Spirit City had been combed through countless of times inside and out. Bing was quiet. Yes. Zero-energy bodies are naturally suited for warships. They are immune to energy attacks. The might of our warships will far exceed theirs. Tang Tian was excited, but suddenly he became quiet. It is just that this road is not easy to walk on. It is very dangerous. The others all nodded their heads. The meeting room immediately exploded. Many people revealed looks of opposition. Some even stood up to stop it. Han Bingning, who had been staying at the back, suddenly stepped forward. We request to go. Three-Spirit City had already become one of the most famous and important cities of the Ursa Major Constellation, but this important city had welcomed many important figures. Tang Tian suddenly asked. Bing did not shift his gaze. He had complete confidence in Tang Tian. Last time, Tang Tian's words made him suddenly see the light, and also made him suddenly realize that Tang Tian was not as ignorant as he thought he was. The core members of the Saint Unit replied, yes. All of the hidden scouts knew that something big was about to happen in Three-Spirit City. Let's not talk about it, but let's take out some of the materials and treasures from the sanctuary first. Tang Tian's mind began to overflow with evil ideas. He racked his brains. Let's make a name for ourselves. We can hold an auction or something to earn some money first. How would these constellations be willing to let us eat alone? And we'll definitely run over to ask for cooperation. At this time, what would the Honorable Martial Alliance do? The meeting room quietened down. In the silence, only a Maori laughed heartlessly. Crazy Tang, you truly are loyal. If the Honorable Martial Continent knows of our identity, then the Honorable Martial Alliance will attack us regardless of the cost. This attack will definitely be crazy and irrational, because that means that their identities will be exposed, and they will become the enemies of the entire Heavens Road. They have no path of retreat, they have to attack. And at the same time we have a passage to the Sacred Saint Galaxy which will also be exposed. Our actions in Wu and Star cannot be hidden from the Honorable Martial Alliance. Tang Tian's expression suddenly became fierce, his killing intent soaring. No one tried to persuade him. Tang Tian nodded his head. You will arrange for the garrisoned army. Other than that, the entire Saint Unit will move to Wu and Star, and be prepared to fight at any time. Three-Spirit City was heavily guarded, unprecedentedly heavily guarded. The teams that constantly patrolled the streets, the various hotels and residences were all checked over and over again, something that had never happened before in the history of Three-Spirit City. The few star doors near Three-Spirit City were under strict surveillance, and the nearby garrisoned armies were all on standby, entering a state of battle. Attack Wu and Star and seize the passage entrance, Tang Cho said without hesitation. One by one, the authoritative figures of the Ursa Major Constellation walked out of the heavily guarded star door. Long Shou Jing, Ta Dun, Flute, Adrian, Xiao Wu. But the military conference was directly related to their future strategies, and they needed to settle it before Bing left the Shang continent. So it's like that. Tang Tian scratched his chin. He suddenly thought of an idea that he had in the past and his eyes lit up. Let Han Bingning and the rest go and gather all the gold-ranked martial artists with zero-energy bodies. Let Song Deity's awakened army go and receive them. When they heard of Tang Tian's idea, they were immediately moved. But in Ursa Major Constellation, the most popular was not the Saint Unit but the armies. Every army was deeply respected by the citizens, while the Saint Unit was rarely known. All of these armies had outstanding achievements, and most of the situations were handled by the armies. Bing's time was tight. He was about to take charge of the various continents to reform the armies and wipe out the pirates, which was the most crucial step for them to grasp the Southern Alliance. If they could complete this step smoothly, the entire Southern Alliance would be under their control. But this step was not so easy to complete. Even if they had star treasures in their hands that no one could replace, it was still an extremely difficult and gigantic project. Tang Tian looked at his comrades that had been together since Wu'an's star. Seeing the flames in everyone's eyes, it was as though time had returned to the time when he was still in the academy. He suddenly laughed and patted his chest. "Relax, I will lead the way, huh? Everyone can fight together again." Regardless of whether they were martial artists or soldiers, only through battle could they prove their worth, and only through victory could they obtain respect. "We will wait for them at Wu'an's star." The old and experienced Liang Qiu also said, "We can't help much here. We might as well go to the Sacred Saint Galaxy, although there are risks, but if we succeed then we will be powerful. It is worth the risk." A military conference that concerned the future of Ursa Major constellation was being held, and almost all of the core members and commanders of the various armies were present. "Aren't we Honorable Martial Alliance?" Bing could not help but ask. A Maori stood up and said, "Crazy Tang, so what if it's dangerous? Where isn't it dangerous?" They were the first batch of people to undergo energy transformation in Ursa Major constellation, and their strengths were at the gold-ranked martial artist level. After the energy transformation, their coordination with the armies became even more difficult. Ursa Major constellation had always hoped to build an army with 0 energy bodies, but until now it was still in the experimental phase. 0 energy bodies? Bing was startled, but he quickly reacted. "You want them to pilot the warships? Even the Saint unit is moving out. Is this a decisive battle?" Bing explained his requirements. Although the Saint unit was excited, but the atmosphere of the meeting suddenly became serious. All of the commanders subconsciously straightened their backs. Their sensitivity towards war far surpassed the Saint unit, and they could feel the aura of a huge battle. "Which constellations?" Tang Tian scoffed. "No, we will first release the existence of the Sacred Saint Galaxy. Tell them that we have found a passage to a new world." Instead, controlling the warships attracted their interest. "I need support." Bing suddenly spoke up. He looked at Tang Tian and threw out his own question. "Although we have already confirmed the Southern Alliance's military reform plan, but the strength we have is too weak, and just relying on the Swift Army and the Skull unit is far from enough. And with the strength of these 2 armies, to reach the true core, we still need a long time. The Honorable Martial Continent will not give us that much time. I need some fighting strength that can be used immediately." Tang Chao's cold voice resonated in the meeting room. The strategic significance of Wu'an's star. Once the enemy finds out about it, without question, they will attack Wu'an's star with all their might and seize the passage from our hands. I suggest that we increase the number of soldiers stationed in Wu'an's star. To us, Wu'an's star's strategic position cannot be lost. "Which constellations should we ally with first?" Tang Chou asked. The truth had proven that the 0 energy body was truly immune to the energy attacks brought by the warship weapons. His intuition towards battles was extremely sharp. Even on a large-scale battlefield he possessed it. It was just that Crazy Tang's logic was extremely unique. But even Bing had to admit, although Tang Tian's logic was as crazy as his personality, but he still had his own logic. All of these strange logic permeated Tang Tian's extremely sensitive intuition towards battles. What made him even more different from ordinary people's logic was always so unexpected, to the point that even his own people were dumbstruck. Bing was looking forward to the expressions of the people from the Honorable Martial Alliance. Sai Lei had obtained the Sacred Saint Galaxy's warship blueprints, and it was as though he had obtained a treasure. Tang Tian had brought a large number of warship weapons, giving Sai Lei the opportunity to conduct a large number of experiments, and Bing Ning and the rest had participated in many of Sai Lei's experiments. The 2 of them exchanged glances as though there was no one else present. Bing could not take it anymore and coughed lightly. "Then we will arrange everything that we need to do." Tang Tian extended his hand out to stop everyone from speaking and said calmly and firmly, "From today onwards no place is safe. In Heaven's Road, we in the Honorable Martial Alliance in the Temple in the Sacred Saint Galaxy, we in the Honorable Martial Continent have entered the decisive stage. At any time anywhere it will be dangerous. As for leading the way, I have already taken a trip. Other than me, who else can go? If we can be sent to the Sacred Saint Galaxy, then our strength in the Sacred Saint Galaxy will have a qualitative change. This bet, we have to take it. Tang Tian's evil thoughts flowed out uncontrollably. We cannot leak out any information. The Honorable Martial Alliance thinks that we have not investigated their background, and will probably look for us to cooperate on the surface. If they want to buy, we will sell since they have money. If they want to cooperate, we will agree to them. After that. Chapter 677. That feeling of meeting his own kind, of meeting a competitor, caused the competitive spirit that had been dormant in his heart for many years to awaken. His face did not change as he laughed. He looked around and casually said, "Is this Three Spirits City? The #1 mechanical city in Heaven's Road? I have heard of it for a long time, nephew. You have to bring me around." The entire Heaven's Road's attention was completely attracted to Ursa Major constellation, as almost every constellation had sent out their own representatives to rush towards Ursa Major constellation day and night. In any constellation, in any route, they would meet a large number of people heading towards Ursa Major constellation. Many of them were free, idle, ambitious, and had outstanding strength. All of them would rush towards Ursa Major constellation without hesitation, hoping to find gold in the tide. But the mechanical army could be replenished endlessly. No. Pai Pa shook her head. The martial spirit inside the mechanical spirit weapons is a support type. It is able to control true power more intricate and complicated, allowing the martial artist's attention to be placed more on the battle itself. Lei Ong frowned. It replaces the martial artist to fight? Everyone knew that Ursa Major constellation had already gained the upper hand in the future competition. As long as the future Ursa Major constellation was able to protect their foundation, the position of Heaven's Road's overlord would not have any suspense. But as Pai Pa's introduction continued to deepen, his expression became more and more serious. He had been through hundreds of battles, and his understanding of battles was far more profound than ordinary martial artists and generals. The existence of mechanical spirit weapons allowed complicated battles to become even simpler, and the requirements for the fighters became even lower. On the mechanical spirit weapons there were bright red numbers. Nothing was more convincing than the real thing, and everyone completely believed that at the end of Heaven's Road, there was a completely different world from Heaven's Road. This caused everyone to discuss fervently. Everyone was filled with curiosity. What was the new world like? How long does it take to groom a qualified mechanical martial artist? Leong asked. Tang Tian did not think too much about it since they wanted to tour. He generously brought Leong to tour the base. But even though he said that he was leading, in truth, Pai Pa was still in charge of explaining. The news spread like lightning throughout Heaven's Road. All the citizens of the constellations were excited by the sensational news, and the discussion about the new world became the hottest topic. He suppressed the distracting thoughts in his mind, and instead his competitive spirit was aroused. His territory had long stabilized, his name had spread far and wide, and even the honorable martial group did not dare to offend him. After so many years, how many people in front of him were able to speak a single word so fluently? He had long been used to intimidating the world with his king's prestige. Even the Honorable Martial Alliance was beneath him. If he wanted to fight, he would fight. If he wanted to fight, he would fight. He looked down on those guys from the bottom of his heart. Pai Pa explained, "Yes. After a large amount of research on martial spirits, we classified the strength of the martial spirits. We have adopted the most common three-tier system of gold, silver, and bronze. A silver-ranked martial soul meant that their intelligence had already reached the level of a silver martial artist. However, because we have chosen fighting souls, they have rich combat experience and strong instincts, so their power will be stronger. Although a traditional army was strong, but that was the result of carefully selecting countless people. And once the war entered a stalemate, the soldiers would continue to be expended, and the army would not be able to replenish itself, and its strength would continue to drop. The Ursa Major constellation that was established from the flames of war had never been afraid of war. Challenging the tradition had long become their habit. Even if their current enemy was the true ruler of Heaven's Road, they were still fearless. They were like their king, as though they never knew fear or dread. He was not anxious about the journey, but it was the best time to accurately assess Ursa Major constellation's strength. After the meeting ended, the entire Ursa Major constellation started to operate like a machine. Every core member that participated in the meeting had a serious expression, but also a tinge of excitement. But the Tang Tian in front of him made him feel the same aura as him. Everyone around did not have any reverence in their hearts. When the two of them spoke, no one dared to make a sound. Lion King Leong was as dazzling as the sun. His entire body naturally emitted a pressure that seemed to cause the air to burn. And Tang Tian, when he stood beside Leong, was not the least bit inferior. Leong's powerful aura did not affect him at all. He was at ease and calm. He could not help but think about his sons. He initially thought that Andre and the rest were already outstanding enough. But after seeing Tang Tian, he finally understood the disparity between Andre and the other party. But at the bottom of the carriage, Tang Tian was actually waiting. Almost everyone was optimistic that Ursa Major constellation would become the future overlord of Heaven's Road. If it was any other planet, everyone would be worried. But to Ursa Major constellation, with their outstanding military achievements and famed generals, to snatch away the big cake from their hands, how much blood would they have to pay? Ursa Major constellation then announced that they would be holding an auction to auction off the gains from the new worlds, and any powerhouses or constellations could participate. Ursa Major constellation was packed with people, especially Bear Head City where the auction was held. It was unprecedentedly lively. Countless people came from afar just to have a look. Tang Tian did not immediately leave Three Spirits City. It was destined to be a long and difficult battle, regardless of whether it was the Honorable Martial Alliance or Temple, or the Honorable Martial Continent. They were already matured colossi and had deep accumulations. Leong took a deep breath. He knew what it meant. Along the way, Leong's heart became more and more shocked, until he noticed a figure running back and forth on the training grounds. He subconsciously stopped. His calm and emotionless face finally changed. The two of them looked at each other and laughed. The base was expanding every day with all sorts of new technologies emerging, many of which Tang Tian was already unfamiliar with. A lion would never be friends with a wolf. After the meeting in Three Spirits City, it seemed to have regained its peace. The tight security was withdrawn, and the garrisoned armies also quickly retreated to Ursa Major constellation. All the signs pointed to the fact that the future focus of Ursa Major constellation would once again shift from Three Spirits City to Bear Head City. At the start, Leong had an expression of interest. Mechanical weapons were a new and novel thing to the Leo constellation. The Leo constellation did not have a mechanical army, and all the unique mechanical spirit weapons made him feel fresh. Silver-grade martial spirit? Leong interrupted. Pai Pa Leong had been observing Tang Tian from the start. The surprise and shock in his heart was far from the calmness he displayed on his face. He could see the fearlessness in the young man's clear eyes, the burning fighting spirit, the disdain towards power. It was as though he was looking at himself when he was younger. All of the hidden scouts were suddenly enlightened. The previous 2 days of tight security was actually because the Ursa Major constellation was discussing about the new world. It was different from the previous conflicts with the Honorable Martial Alliance. It was a battle to the death without any leeway, and the degree of bitterness was enough to cause people's scalps to go numb. But to the ambitious youths of the Ursa Major constellation, they viewed it as an extremely good opportunity. Their thirst for battle, their yearning for achievements, their longing for the future, compared to the old generals with stable positions and authority, was even more intense. 2 days later, a piece of news shocked Heaven's Road. The Ursa Major constellation had announced that they had discovered a new world. Three Spirits City, which had regained its peace, once again became lively. Three Spirits City was currently Heaven's Road's mechanical city, where countless of mechanical engineers and mechanical martial artists gathered. A large number of free mechanical engineers stayed there. On one hand, there were many of the same profession and they could exchange pointers, and on the other hand, mechanical engineers required a large amount of materials to create mechanical weapons, and Three Spirits City had all sorts of materials. As long as you had money, you could easily buy all sorts of materials. The true strength of the Ursa Major constellation had always been a mystery to the outside world. To be able to personally visit it, Leong wanted to properly evaluate it. Three Spirit City's base had specialized trading companies, and the daily consumption of resources in the bronze base was astonishing. As per usual, the transport fleet entered the bronze base on time, and nothing out of the ordinary happened. The tense atmosphere was oppressive, but everything was carried out in an orderly manner. They all knew that the curtains to the decisive battle had begun. Number 23. Heroes come from the young. he praised. His deep and resounding voice brought along a tyrannical might, brimming with a convincing power. Nephew's elegance is unparalleled under the heavens. Tang Tian was not the least bit embarrassed and said, Lion King Lei Tian, welcome to Three Spirits City. Pai Pa praised in her heart as expected of the Lion King, to be able to grasp the crux of the problem so quickly, she said without hesitation. Our mechanical martial artists preparatory barracks, the standard training period for silver rank students, is 1 year. In 1 year the students with talent will be able to grasp the essentials. In 3 years they will become veterans. For the bronze rank students, it will take longer for them to grasp the basics. They will need 3 years. Following that, the Ursa Major constellation displayed a large number of samples from the New World, crystals with high energy density, plants that contain sword intent, all sorts of new weapons. Pai Pa was very familiar with them. This is the Frost Mountain, one of our main mechanical spirit weapons. Its weight is only 1/3 of an ordinary mechanical spirit weapon. It is a brand new metal with a silver luster. Its defensive capabilities are outstanding. Without an energy barrier, it can withstand 5 attacks from a gold-ranked martial artist. It uses a large amount of new technology with 7 card slots. The lowest requirement is a silver rank spirit card, which can be inserted with a gold rank spirit card. And it is equipped with martial spirits. All of them are battle spirits. We have gone through a large number of battle spirit fragments to sort and filter them, and picked out martial spirits that have reached the silver rank. One was the Lion King who had dominated the world for a long time, the other was the Young Bear King. Due to the huge demand, a large number of trading companies engaged in this business, and the number of trading groups entering and exiting daily was endless. The carriage